pretrials, 30 trials, and 55 records requests. Agenda preparation, we had done 203 items, resolutions or ordinances that we initially drafted. And then we also do, we track primarily for our own purposes, but if in prosecution cases, if we have to gather records or do a records request response, we had 69 of those. We track those as more of a caseload and just for us to see how much time we're spending on prosecution matters. Other than that, we did a number of ordinance updates last year. We always do work with Jim Collins and his staff in the parking and traffic ordinances, short-term rental and the room tax ordinances, and all of the accompanying information to get that into place, which started in either August or September. Now my memory's failing me, but we worked on the pedal pub ordinance, alcohol beverage licensing ordinance, and we updated that policy. Worked with community development on the chickens and bees ordinance, Public Works on the wastewater chapter 24 revision and their handbook updates. That one is a good one if you ever need some sleep. It's highly technical. So chapter 19, we did a revision to the parks ordinance, and chapter 5 special events. We did the vaping ordinance for minors. We're currently working on the research for the vaping in a general manner. Chapter 21, special charges, special assessments, and transportation utilities, and Chapter 11, an electrical ordinance update. Besides vaping, ones that were currently ongoing, we're still working on the nuisance properties. We have done some changes to the process, and we're also reviewing the ordinances, and also noise ordinance, which kind of goes along with that. Working with the transportation folks again on scooters, skateboards, bike lanes, and other alternative modes of transportation, and vaping, which I already mentioned. We worked with the Department of Community Development on the real estate acquisition and disposition policy. We're currently working on research for a proclamations policy if the council decides to adopt that. We play an active role in economic development projects. This year we worked with Oshkosh Corporation, finalizing the development agreement has been done, but there are encroachment agreements, easements, and some other things that still needed to be cleaned up. The Oshkosh Avenue development agreement, the Merge and Aviation Plaza development agreements. The Arena project continues to be a project. And then the South Shore redevelopment area, the Pioneer Drive and Pioneer Island. Some major projects outside of economic development. We worked with DPW on their WPDS permit challenge, primarily related to the phosphorus issue. The MS4 general permit, we filed comments with DNR. The PFAS issues and the Winnebago Mental Health Institute area, the water issue out there. Some other areas we work in, contracts and agreements. We review a lot of contracts and agreements for other departments and divisions. We provide legal review and support on open records requests, provided review of all the city bond issues, and we coordinate private bond issuance requests and handle various real estate matters, deeds, easements, privilege in streets, environmental issues. And then this year we did training for some boards and commissions and some staff. The two biggest ones we worked on, we did a manual for Plan Commission and for the redevelopment authorities to give them a more comprehensive manual of items that would come before them and information so that they can have everything at their fingertips to do their jobs. All of the attorneys completed emergency management training. This year I was fortunate enough to take a week. I taught a municipal law class down at UW-Madison Law School. I also spoke at a couple seminars on PFAS and special assessment issues. And I'm currently serving as the president to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Attorneys Section. So that's what we did with our summer vacation. As to the budget, we have no real significant changes. We anticipate coming in within our budget amount this year, even though we've had to do some fill-in and things in our department. I think we're going to be okay in terms of the budget this year. And we have no significant changes for next year. The only changes were some changes to the non-city attorney office funds. We have some of the unclassified funds that I use for like outside counsel and some of those. I worked with the finance department, and Jennifer was very patient with me. We went through and consolidated some of those funds, better defined them so that they will have more specific charges assigned to them, and it will provide us better tracking. And then I think we actually were able to eliminate one of those that was kind of a duplicate fund. So it saved a little bit of money in the budget because it was a duplicate fund that we weren't really charging to anyway. So our goal for next year is we want to continue some training for employees or officials. With the absences in our offices, we haven't figured out what that's going to be yet because we hadn't had time to think, but we're going to do some of that training and we'll continue to manage the TIF districts and issues related to those. So that is my book report.
So you're asking for staff reduction, is that right?
Yeah. I just got my staff back. All right. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Thank you, bud.
Try to make it easy.
Well, we're almost back on track, so. Now with Public Works, because of the volume, we won't be doing the capital improvements today. That's for November 5th, I believe.
We'll hit on a few things like the vehicles and stuff like that. We're prepared to speak about those things, but the bigger projects will certainly take up at the November 6th workshop.
Public Works begins on page 74. James, are you going to start with admin? You're going to go to?
No, we will be starting with sanitation and then recycling after that. Then we can let Bob get back to work, and we'll transition into central garage and streets after that.
Does Bob actually work?
Yes, he does.
Bill, that hurts.
He used to work when he was on the truck.
Yeah.
But now he just,
From Bill.
Yeah, it's rich, isn't it?
So what page is
Sanitation starts on page 126.
126?
At least if your pages are numbered the same as mine, it starts on page 126.
Yes, it does.
All right, excuse me. Sanitation division services generally fall into the strengthening our neighborhoods and improving our quality of life sections of the strategic plan. The division is responsible for the maintenance and management of properties that were formerly used as municipal landfills. The Quarry Park, the Knapp Street Quarry, the Timmerman Quarry, and soon to be the Keenest and Paulus sites once we get construction going over there. So this division manages those sites as well. We anticipate Keenest Paulus will probably come into the operational side of this budget in 2021. We have finished acquisition out there. We are moving through the DNR permitting. We've got just about all of our approvals in place and hope to be bidding that project out here real soon. So operation of that facility will show up in this budget next year. Sanitation and recycling division continue to be among some of the highest rated divisions in the annual citizen survey. Some of the key accomplishments of this division this year: recent attachments to the city of Oshkosh from the town of Algoma through the cooperative plan. The division took a kind of in-depth analysis of all the routes with those attachments from the Zone B attachments from the cooperative plan. There was a significant increase in the amount of parcels that are being serviced by both sanitation and recycling. So they took an in-depth look at those routes and were able to do some optimization of those routes to be able to better provide services to those customers, both new and existing, without needing to add any staff or equipment. We continue to work with our environmental consultant on the reviewing the long-term operation and maintenance plans of those former landfills that I mentioned. Whenever possible, we engage the DNR to see if we can do some revisions to our monitoring plans to reduce our overall costs. Some key impacts to the budgets this year. The Winnebago County Solid Waste Management Board is increasing the tipping fee for garbage by $1 per ton to material that is brought to the transfer station. And that increase in landfill tipping fees accounts for the majority of the increase that you see in this proposed budget.
James, we've talked about this in prior budgets, so as far as indicators and as it relates to the dollar per ton increase, how many tons of solid waste were collected last year? Do we know that?
I think Bob's got some of that information here.
Last year, Lori, we took 13,735 tons of garbage there. We are on pace to be at about 13,800 this year. The biggest impact that's happened is you've seen we've gotten a lot of rain. And when it rains, it gets in the garbage cans, and the garbage weights they're a little off this year, but they're up. I'm gonna be up front with you right away. They are up. And we're gonna probably end up about 13,800 tons of garbage.
So that's across 23-some thousand dwelling units?
We service 22,400 households. We're residential properties.
Any other questions on the sanitation side? All right, then we'll move into recycling right away, which is just a couple of pages before sanitation in your books. Again, as with the sanitation division, recycling services, fit into the strengthen neighborhoods and improve our quality of life sections of the strategic plan by providing regular collection of recyclable materials to our residential properties and educating our residents and property owners as to proper recycling to reduce the amount of waste going to the landfills. The state of Wisconsin does continue to provide some assistance to the recycling division through the recycling grant program. The money for that program comes from landfill tipping fees, but the program does not completely reimburse all costs. The yard waste drop-off site is managed by the recycling division, and as I mentioned before, recycling and sanitation continue to be among some of the highest rated divisions in the citizen survey. We talked about the optimization of the routes a little bit with sanitation, but the staff went through the same process with recycling again to optimize those routes to be able to better serve those Monday routes without having to add any staff or equipment. They also went through a bit of a evaluation of the yard waste drop-off site to try to make it a little more user-friendly and a little more organized for when people come in, so they kind of know where things are at and where they're going. Overall, we're looking at a reduction in the total budget request from 2019. Some of the impacts, due to the lag in construction of vehicles, the sanitation vehicle that was ordered in 2019 will not arrive and therefore be paid for until 2020. So there's about a year lag between ordering and receipt of those vehicles. The Winnebago County Solid Waste Management Board is maintaining their recycling handling fee at $10 per ton. If you recall from last year, they increased that from $5 per ton to $10 per ton. There's been no change in that from their side proposed for 2020. From a CIP vehicle standpoint, the recycling division is has a vehicle request in for the replacement of the grinder that is utilized at the yard waste drop-off sites. This piece of equipment basically grinds up all the branches and things that come in to turn it into a more mulch-like material that can be handled more effectively and efficiently. And I believe we still have several residents that come and do pick up off of that mulch pile as well, right, Kevin?
Yes, and the rest goes to local landscapers and other people that might have.
Are we still taking like grass clippings and stuff over to the biodigester as well, Kevin?
Not as much as we had in the past.
Okay.
That's gone down quite a bit.
Any questions on recycling? I did unfortunately miss, we do have a couple of side load vehicles in for sanitation in the CIP for next year. The plan is, we're looking at having to replace 4 vehicles over the next 2 years. So our goal would be to bid those out at the same time to have a larger bid, but then because of the spacing on purchasing, the cost would end up being spread out over a couple of different years worth of CIP.
With some of that lead time before we purchase some of them, are we talking to Oshkosh Corp?
Yes, we have been talking with Oshkosh Corporation. We are working on some of the details of I guess I'll call it a lease agreement, but it's generally here we'll give you a vehicle to use for a few days to see how it works, how you like it. We've had some meetings with upper level management in the McNeelius division of Oshkosh Corporation. They have identified the vehicle that they have routinely submitted for our sanitation and recycling does not function very well in our needs. And so when we met with them, they sat down and said, well, that is our best-selling vehicle, but it looks like this other vehicle is more what you are looking for. So they've identified a few things that way, and are also looking at some potential minor modifications to be able to better suit some of the needs that we have. So we have been working with them, and we're trying to iron out the final details on I'll call it a lease agreement, but it's let us borrow a vehicle for a little while and test run it on some of our routes and see how it does.
James, don't forget to beat him up on price.
That's a bid process, Bill, so I don't have much control over that.
Save, Jim, good save.
All right, if there's nothing else with that, we'll move into Central Garage. I'll let Bob step down, and we'll ask Travis to come on up. Central Garage Division budget starts on page 83 of your books. Give everyone just a moment to get there, because I know our budgets kind of bounce around all over the books, and the way I go through them doesn't exactly match with how they're in the book, but I'm trying to get staff in and out in the most efficient manner. So Central Garage Division services generally fit into the improve and maintain our infrastructure portion of the city's strategic plan through their primary focus of maintaining the vehicles and equipment that are utilized by the Public Works departments, as well as assisting other departments with their vehicle and equipment maintenance needs. The Central Garage Division provides all diesel fuel and unleaded gasoline to the entire city fleet with the exception of the transit buses. So every other department that utilizes diesel or unleaded fuel, Central Garage's budget is paying for all of those other departments. The division also assists with the writing of specifications for vehicle purchases that are approved through the capital improvement program. Some of the key accomplishments this year, we completed the integration of the fire department fleet maintenance into the Central Garage Division. That was something that started last year as the fire department completed their staffing study this year. The recommendation from that was to fully transition all fleet maintenance over to Central Garage Division, and with the transfer of the mechanic that was previously in the fire department over to Central Garage, we have completed that transition this year. Central Garage staff continue to work on getting the certifications necessary to continue to provide that level of service for the fire department. There are several ASE, emergency vehicle technician certifications. Several of the mechanics have been going through them. Travis has been going through some of the manager programs as well, so they continue to work on getting that training to continue to support that department. Overall impact.
James, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, go right
So,
ahead.
so Central Garage now pretty much takes care of all of our vehicles with the exception of the buses, is that accurate?
No,
Or
we do not service the vast majority of the police department vehicles either.
Oh.
A few police department vehicles, namely the CSO vehicles and some of the supervisory vehicles, do have some maintenance performed at Central Garage, but the regular maintenance on all the squad cars is still handled through various mechanic shops throughout the city.
is that because of the urgency for them to get back on the road?
That's generally it. We have been working with them to try to cycle some things through, but at this point, with integrating the fire department this year, we've been concentrating more on that than we have been on trying to integrate more things from the police department. We kind of want to take it one little step at a time and make sure we didn't let anybody down in the process.
Sure.
Transit buses and, like I said, the majority of the police departments. Some of the other departments and divisions do a few minor things, but most of it is all handled through Central Garage.
Okay, thank you.
From a budgetary standpoint, as I mentioned, diesel and unleaded gasoline for the entire city fleet are handled through Central Garage. Being a highly volatile cost due to the commodity costs, it's very difficult to try to estimate and budget for those costs. But I think over the past few years, we've done a fairly decent job at trying to estimate where those costs are going to go. But it is something that is completely out of our control as far as how those costs are going to come in. You know, any kind of weather event in the Gulf of Mexico or, you know, unrest in the Middle East could dramatically drive those costs one way or another. So it is very volatile, but yet we continue to manage them fairly well. As I mentioned, you know, estimates of the fuel costs and the integration of the mechanic from fire department are really account for the proposed increases in this division budget. And from a Central Garage standpoint, we do not have any vehicles in the CIP, so we need to pull that book out for this one. Any questions on the garage or any more questions on the garage? All right, then we'll move along to Streets Division. Streets Division starts on page 80 of your budget book. Streets Division services generally fall into the improve and maintain our infrastructure section of the city's strategic plan. These services include maintaining our streets, sanitary sewer system, storm sewer system, and city-owned regional stormwater management practices. The division also continues to provide a number of services to other city departments. They assist community development in demolition of structures that are acquired, assist parks with paving and other construction projects. They assist the water utility with patching asphalt streets where there have been water main breaks over the course of the year. In sewer and stormwater, they televise and maintain those sewers and manhole structures. In addition to, on the stormwater side, maintaining the regional stormwater practices. They do a lot of the surface treatment, so mowing around the periphery, maintaining landscaping beds, and we work with a consultant to maintain the native vegetation within those stormwater practices. Excuse me. Some of the key accomplishments, completed the asphalt overlay, more commonly referred to as the cold mix asphalt overlay program, although in recent years we've kind of done a bit of a mix and match between cold mix and hot mix on that program. Streets completed this year: 10th Avenue from Oregon to Minnesota, Madison Street from Merritt to Northwestern, and Northwestern Avenue from Mount Vernon to Madison. While they were working on Madison and Northwestern, They also constructed an ADA curb ramp in that area to help get traffic from the sidewalks into Roe Park and the YMCA.
James,
yes.
just real quick, so on page 80, right, so streets on a performance report for KPIs, what are the expectations there? I would imagine we would have like number of miles of streets repaired, number of miles of streets replaced, et cetera.
Some of those things generally fall under the engineering side of things as well, because engineering coordinates the overall street reconstruction program, and we also coordinate with Streets Division on the cold mix or the asphalt overlay program. I know some of the things in the KPI report that council received, I believe a couple of weeks ago. Looks like we had a couple of some data issues that don't quite have all the data in, but I know the one KPI that's in there is kind of the percent of street miles reconstructed or resurfaced annually. For 2018, we were at about 1.05%. 2017 and 2016 were just under 1.5%
Of total streets?
of total street miles resurfaced or reconstructed. So at, 2018 at 1%, that's about a once every 100 years. At the 1.5% from 17 and 16, that's about a 70-year turnaround. So ideally, we'd like to try and get that number up a little bit. Some of our more heavily used streets, we're needing significant work at the 40 and 50-year marks, and sometimes sooner depending on the type of traffic that they're getting. So, but that's where those are at, and I'm not sure how we didn't get the data in the report that you received a couple weeks ago, but we'll certainly work with Human Resources to try to rectify that.
Well, I think we were hoping that it would be in the budget documents by next year, so
Okay.
maybe that'll be a step that gets saved if it ends up here, right?
Got to get incorporated in there.
James, do we have our own mini plant, hot batch plant or anything like that? No, just doesn't make any sense.
No, we don't do enough of that type of work to really, for that to be a cost effective. Generally speaking, with, the Northeast or MCC supply most of our materials, and that's bid out annually through Purchasing Division for all of the city departments that need to purchase paving materials. So it just kind of works out a little better that way.
Okay, thank you.
We do have our own paving equipment, but not the ability to produce the materials.
Sure.
One of the other key accomplishments this year was developing an introductory level, try and get that out, street maintenance worker position. We've had some challenges trying to recruit equipment operator level positions. So with the creation of the street maintenance worker position, it's more of a construction type worker position, does not have a commercial driver license requirement, but then we work with the staff once we get them in to work them up to eventually be able to get a CDL to be able to move up into some of those other operator positions. So that's been very successful so far this year. I think we've got one person that we hired earlier this year that is working on moving up into an equipment operator position now, and I believe we just filled 2 maintenance worker positions, Kevin?
Yes.
So it's been very helpful for the division to kind of create an entry point level position to get some people in and be able to progress within the organization. Also completed numerous demolition projects for the redevelopment authority, and the division will soon be starting demolition on the properties that were acquired for the Keenest Paulus Quarry landfill mitigation project as well. Some of the key budget impacts: usage of road salt sodium chloride is very weather dependent. The current budget assumption accounts for the cost of the guaranteed purchase of 2,100 tons and a reserve purchase of 700 tons from the 2019-2020 contract through the DOT, plus an estimate for an early fill that'll be on the next contract with the DOT. I mentioned earlier the asphalt overlay program. We've been kind of mixing and matching a little bit between hot mix and cold mix. Overall, the cost, there's not an increase in the cost. It's just a matter of where in the budget those costs hit. So we've shifted some of those things around a little bit to more effectively reflect where we expect those costs to hit next year. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Kevin a little bit to talk about some of the equipment that we've got in the CIP for Streets Division.
Page that's I think it's starts on page 36 with a couple of air compressors. In the major equipment section.
Yeah, major equipment starts on 36, and then vehicles start on 38.
So what we're looking to do, we have a couple of older air compressors that we're gonna do like a 2-for-1. Instead of, we don't need 2 compressors, so we're just gonna get 1 compressor. Not too much to talk about there. Get into the street division equipment on page 38. The mini excavator, that's a smaller excavator that you may see around town. It's more maneuverable, you know, provides us the opportunity to work in the street a lot easier. That's seen quite a bit of use over the last, you can see we purchased that in 2010. So got a good life out of that. An equipment trailer that hauls that piece of equipment. And the next item on there is a smaller 1-ton pickup truck with a dump on the back. That piece of equipment you can see is 2001. So again, that 19, 20 years out of that truck. Have a tandem axle. We try and do one of those every year. Spread them out. We've got that one's a 2007, and what we'll do, it's not just based on age for all of our equipment. We base it on, Travis does they compile all the costs associated with that piece of equipment, and we look at those numbers real close to make sure that it's not just, okay, this piece of equipment's 10 years old, it's time to get a new one. His group does a great job of maintaining the equipment, and we're seeing longer and longer life due to the preventive maintenance stuff that we do on our equipment. But like everything, it comes a point in time where you're seeing the ground under your feet, you got to replace it. So we've had a few instances where we have actually had that happen.
Do you bid out all these, or do you typically just get one and done, or
Those would all be bid through purchasing division.
And then-
Travis will work on developing
how
specs
big
with
of a range
purchasing.
do we bid out? I mean, is it 50-mile radius, 100-mile radius?
Well, she
Goes on
puts
a
it on-
network.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Puts it on a couple of different websites as well as the locals.
Kevin, I take it you haven't seen the Flintstones?
I have.
Now, also in those bids, though, I think if I remember, there's always a trade-in too, right? So we get a little better, we trade some of the.
For the most part, usually they lowball you,
Yeah.
on your trade-in. And so on a few instances where we know there's better value to be had, we'll take them to auction.
Okay, good.
We do things like that as well.
All right.
Yeah, that net price you see on that second column, the city utility contribution,
Right.
is really net of that. Because of the age of these equipment, we don't get a lot for them. All kidding aside, there are some of those vehicles that look like the proverbial Flintstone vehicle. So Travis has a maintenance record on each and every one of these, and I'll spare the counsel of the boredom that Travis gives me when he brings his
Well-
book of his book of.
It's good to talk about because I think, publicly, I probably get hit the most on our big fancy city garage, and I think the people at home don't understand the efficiencies we're starting to get out of it. The other thing I get hit on is every truck is new in the city, and have that conversation with every single person.
Interesting.
That all we do is get a new truck, every other week. So, it's good to talk about this stuff so people understand. You guys are documenting. I'm looking at Travis's book over there. He's got more notes than I do in my entire binder. So, I think it is important people understand that we're not buying a new truck every other day, and we're stretching the lives, and we're stretching the usefulness out of these vehicles.
And I think, another big thing to keep in mind too is just because the outside of the truck looks shiny doesn't mean the truck is in good shape.
Great.
I mean, Andy's old supervisor pickup truck, it looked a little ratty on the outside, but it literally had holes in the floorboard that they were patching until the new one came in. There have been several of the trucks, and Travis's maintenance records indicate that where, there was a few years where certain engine manufacturers had some challenges, so we were spending tens of thousands of dollars annually trying to maintain vehicles that, were partially due to, they just didn't last long enough because of some design issues. So just because a truck looks good on the outside doesn't mean it's not shot on the inside. And I think that's another big point to try to keep in mind. But yeah, Mark alluded to it, but, Travis comes to our first budget workshop with 2 or 3 pages on almost every vehicle. He's got a 5+ year maintenance history on each vehicle that he proposes to put in the CAP to support why that vehicle is needed over perhaps another one.
Yeah, and I think you guys are doing a great job. So I want the people at home to understand that, because that is, I get hit up on that all the time.
I think the new garage has done a great deal to help extend the lives of the vehicles. If you look at Travis, like a doctor, he does a lot more preventive care for the vehicles than we've ever done before, because he can get them in there real quick, in and out. It literally used to be a real chore. Unfortunately, we hired Travis right after we moved into the garage, so he has no past history of that. But it was just terrible for us to get a vehicle in. It's like, well, we got to move these 5 vehicles out before we can move your 1 vehicle in. It was a production just to get it into the garage. And then Kevin, I think you told me you estimated that we're probably saving each and every person 20 minutes of prep time in the morning. So we're getting them out the door. We're getting 20 minutes of production extra out of every employee that works under Kevin every single day just because of that facility. So there's little things like that we need to keep telling that story.
We absolutely need to tell that story, and I think that's awesome. 20 minutes out of every person that walks out of that building adds up quick.
So I think a couple more
Okay,
vehicles there,
yeah,
Kevin.
there's a pickup truck in there, a snow blower, 1993. That's the large snow blower that we use when we pick snow after a major
big storm.
snow event.
It's the one that goes on the end loader, not the one you push on the sidewalk.
Yeah. So again, that's a lot of years out of that one.
My driveway.
It might be a little wider than your driveway usually.
Barricade trailer, that's the trailer we use to haul around barricades for special events. I'd see it, it's seen a lot of years, and we've actually probably been using that thing a little bit more than what it's designed for. So time to replace that. Single axle on the next page, page 39. Again, that 1 a year, try and keep those going through. That's a 2008. And then the last on the list for us is a large loader, again, a 2008 piece of equipment. Questions on any specific piece of equipment?
Any other questions on streets division as a whole? All right, well, with that, I'll let Kevin go, and we'll swap out a few staff up here real quickly. Travis, I think you can get out probably as well then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be moving next to engineering division, which starts on page 77 of your budget books. And I'll have Justin and Steve, you want to come up too right away?
This is a momentous event. They're all wearing ties today, by the way, so I'm just
Other than Fridays, you normally will catch all 3 of us at a time. Fridays, Steve usually keeps it on. Justin and I usually ditch him on Friday. Engineering division, as I mentioned, starts on page 77. I want to welcome Justin to his first budget meeting in his role now as the engineering division manager and city engineer. Engineering division services fit into the improve and maintain our infrastructure, support economic development, and improve our quality of life sections of the city's strategic plan. Those services include the division's primary responsibility to manage construction projects. The division is responsible for survey, design, and inspection of the annual street reconstruction program, the annual asphalt overlay program, sanitary sewer, water main, and storm sewer design, and the coordination of long-range planning documents for all three utilities as it comes to the collection or distribution system. The utilities themselves have their own long-range asset management plans, which we'll touch on a little bit more as we get into the utilities. Engineering division assists other departments in the planning and managing of construction projects as well. Continues to support Parks Department with projects, providing design and construction services for the Transportation Department, in particular related to the parking lot construction program. And continues to provide support for economic development by assisting developers and helping to manage the city's construction projects. Some key accomplishments this year, I mentioned Justin's new role, but I think the overall reorganizational efforts within the department resulted in several changes and improvements within the engineering division. The changes in the management structure provided a more well-balanced reporting structure within the division, giving the supervisors a bit more of an equal span of control. Before the reorganization, it was very unbalanced. One supervisor had 13 or 14, the other had 3 direct reports. So we balanced that out a little bit. Also kind of changed some of the descriptions between the engineering division, or engineering supervisor, and the construction management supervisor as a part of balancing that control. It also provided the opportunity to create career progression ladders. We talked a little bit about it in streets division with the street maintenance worker, but we also have accomplished that here in the engineering division with the engineering technician and locator positions. This structure allows opportunities for staff to progress and kind of, climb the ladder, if you will, as their knowledge, skills, and abilities continue to grow and certifications are achieved. Division completed the reconstruction, or construction efforts, I should say, of the extensions of North Keller and North Westfield Street in the vicinity of the Oshkosh Corporation Global Headquarters Building. Completed the second phase of the sanitary sewer interceptor extension in Oregon Street from 16th to 21st. That project will continue over the next several years, ultimately reaching all the way down to Ripple Avenue. Also completed reconstruction of Hazel from Washington to Irving, as well as the extension of the asphalt trail within Menominee Park. Some of the budget impacts for this division: the state of Wisconsin requires the city update the streets PACER rating on a biannual basis. As it so happens, that's every odd year. So there's a bit of a yo-yo effect, if you will, in this division, where in the odd years there's an uptick in the budget to be able to take on that workload and work with, the last couple of years we've been working with a consultant to get that PACER work done in a more timely, effective manner. And then in the even years, that goes down. So we got a bit of an up and down yo-yo effect in this division because of that. So with 2020 being an even year and PACER not being worked on, you see a little bit of a dip in the overall the budget for that. Any questions from engineering division? As Mark mentioned, we'll get into the main crux of the CIP managed by engineering next week, Wednesday, I guess it is?
Yeah.
Yes, Mayor.
KPIs for engineering, is that like number of bids, number of projects, what do you see for KPIs for
Some of the big things you'll see for engineering, the one of the ones that was in your report that you received last week is the median PACER rating. So that's kind of the PACER rating is the evaluation of the street surface. So the median rating is, at what point are 50% of the streets rated higher than this, and at what point are 50% of the streets rated lower than this. So in 2016, that median rating was an 8. That meant 50% of the streets in the city were an 8 or higher, 50% were lower. In 17 and 18, that rating is a 7. So one thing to note about the PACER rating scale, it is an integer. It's either rated a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. So there's no kind of in between for any one section of street. One little bit of
Excuse
additional
me,
information.
James, if the rating went down, what would you attribute that?
Quite frankly, it's mostly attributable in my mind to being extremely close. You know, it could have been one segment of street shifting down that shifted that, you know, because we are looking at that median value. Another factor in that is, you know, as we talked earlier with Streets Division about the percent of streets that we're reconstructing or resurfacing on an annual basis. You know, the last few years, we've been, you know, at 1% or less, so, you know, I think we're getting a little less done than we'd like to be able to in order to keep that up. The document I've passed around is the last 20 years worth of cumulative PACER data, percentage-wise showing, you know, kind of a failed condition rated a 1 or 2 in red, poor condition rated a 3 or 4 in orange, fair condition rated a 5 or 6 in yellow, good condition in blue rated a 7 or 8, and then green, excellent, being rated a 9 or a 10. So kind of a little bit to answer that question, Mark, you can see the last couple of years, the percentage in the green and rated 9 and 10 has been declining. And the percentage rated really from a 7 to a 10 has been declining the last couple of years.
James, do we do our own PACER ratings, or is it third-partied?
This year, as well as 2 years ago, we've had a consultant doing that work. The cost for this year's was significantly less than 2 years ago as they got familiar with our system. So we've had a consultant doing it the last couple of years. Just from a staff timing standpoint, it got to be an overload to try to do it in-house.
Okay, thank you.
When was the last time we hit 7 as our median? I'm struggling to understand that from.
I think the median was probably only an 8 for that one cycle. I don't have any of the additional median value, but, you know, one thing you could do, you know, if you take the information I just kind of passed out, you know, you can see the 50% generally is falling in that 7 to 8. If you go back 20 years, you know, that 50% band was in the fair or the 5 to 6 category. Unfortunately, when calculating the actual median that was put in for the KPI, I didn't calculate it back any further than that, I don't believe.
But generally, you want it to be in the, you know, the green, obviously, you'd want it to be there, but it's not there, but it's been growing, but then the last couple of years, you've seen a little blip on it. It was progressively going down through most of the decade.
Yeah, I think the one interesting thing is I graphed this data, the yellow band stays about the same size throughout the entire spectrum of the 20 years. It's just a matter of, you know, shifting between the green and blue and the red and orange, kind of. Any other questions for engineering division? All right, then we will move right on to administration division, which starts on page 74 of your budget book, kind of working backwards through the book right now. Administration division activities, you know, generally fall under the improve and maintain infrastructure, support economic development, enhance quality of life, and strengthen our neighborhoods sections of the strategic plan. The administration division supports all the other divisions within the Department of Public Works. I talked a little bit during the engineering division about the reorganization. It shifted some personnel and responsibilities around in order to more effectively be able to serve our customers both internally and externally. The administration division is purely just a personnel division consisting of 3 people, myself, Steve, and the administrative assistant. So it is the smallest of our divisions, and you know, it really is just the 3 of us. Any questions regarding that division? Okay, next we'll move on to the lead service line replacement program budget, and let me see, I think I got it, here we go. Page 183 of your budget books. The lead service line replacement fund is utilized to process property owner reimbursements for the private side lead water service replacement program. Money expended within this fund is offset through reimbursements through the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Safe Drinking Water Loan Program Principal Forgiveness Loan, so it's effectively a grant. In 2017, the fund assisted 56 property owners in replacing their private side lead services. In 2018, the fund assisted 128 property owners in replacing their services. And as of about 2 weeks ago, when I was looking at the data, the fund had assisted 71 property owners so far in 2019. One of the one of the key things to keep in mind is, this fund is dependent on property owners taking advantage of the city's lead service replacement program. The more people that choose to participate, the higher the cost will be, but also the higher the reimbursements will be through the grant program. One thing to keep in mind, that grant program will be coming to an end, and that'll be one of the big things that we'll be looking at doing as a part of this program in 2020 is beginning a program review and evaluation to determine if we want to continue this program going forward after the DNR funding has expired, what that program looks like, what that reimbursement is going to look like, and how those reimbursements will be funded. So that'll be an important thing for us to start working on in 2020.
James, do we have an idea, sorry, Bob, James, do we have any idea of how many homes still have that lead lateral?
We are working on getting a more complete inventory right now. Unfortunately, right now, the best we could do was, kind of estimate based on when homes were constructed. And as we continue to, as we get into water utility, one of the things we'll be talking about is a meter replacement program and some residential cross-connection control requirements. So that'll help us build that database.
Go ahead, Steve.
And hold your question until we get into the new regulations coming forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we will certainly be hitting on that more as we talk about water utility, which will actually be the next thing we're going to talk about.
I didn't mean to,
Nope, that's quite all right. It rolls together well, which is why I put these two back to back.
thank you both.
Yes.
That funding ends 2020?
I believe the first of the grants will expire in 2020. The second will expire in 2021, if I remember correctly. That's why we would need to look in 2020 to start developing what that program is going to look like going forward.
Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna ask, so we have the records, obviously, of the ones that we've done with this program. Do we have captured, outside of the estimate based on ages of homes, those that have been replaced by private owners? Like, have we kept record or tracked that?
They're all gonna be replaced by private owners, right? I mean, we don't.
Well, I mean, outside of the
many?
lead
Yeah.
replacement program.
We don't have a record necessarily of that. It's nothing we track. Potentially going back through all of the building permits that were pulled, we could potentially try to find those, but I'm not sure how easy that's going to be, having with different formats and paper copies over the years and everything. But that, jumping forward, that is one of the proposed requirements in the new lead and copper rule revisions that the EPA has put out their drafts.
Sounds like a really good intern job.
Probably not.
I think with the amount of work that's going to be needed, and as well, I mean, if there's nothing too much else, we might as well roll right into water utility and start talking about some of that. But I think it's going to be a lot more involved than just that, I think. So, were there any further questions on that before I do roll us into water utility? All right. So, water utility budget starts on page 283 of your budget book. Water utility services fall within the support economic development, improve and maintain our infrastructure, and strengthen our neighborhood sections of the strategic plan through their primary mission of protecting public health and safety by providing safe water to drink and an adequate supply for both industry and fire demands. The private side lead service replacement program continues. We've continued to learn some valuable lessons through this program, and we continue to apply those as we move forward, and we'll, as we mentioned, continue to apply that as we look at what that program is going to look like going forward. Some of the key accomplishments this year between utility accounting and finance department completed the transition from quarterly to monthly billing. Russ, I don't know if you've got anything you want to add on that as we move forward?
I think I'll cover some of that when I get into the finance
Okay.
section of the budget later on.
Yeah, it's one thing, if I could, just 1 second. It's one of the unique things with the utilities is some of the staff is split between the finance department and the public works department. Utility accounting staff are within the finance department, so that's why I wanted to give Russ an opportunity, and if you're gonna touch on that more when you come up, that'll be great. Sorry, Mayor.
No, I'm sorry. Did I hear you say the supports economic development? Because I thought this was more about infrastructure and public health. I'm just,
Certainly, it does support economic development, because if we can't provide an adequate water supply to serve the businesses and industries that want to come to the city, that will stifle our economic development.
certainly, I didn't recall that.
It generally doesn't show up that way, I don't think, in the strategic plan, but as I look at the mission of the utility, it absolutely is to support economic development, because we need to be able to provide the water so those businesses and industries can come here and thrive. So that's how I see it supporting economic development.
Can we talk for a second about my little pet project here, ductile versus PVC?
We can bring it up, certainly. Over the last couple of years, we have started doing some PVC pipe replacements in our CAP. The challenge being it has to be looked at a very specific case-by-case basis. The state of Wisconsin Administrative Code is very clear. If you're doing water main installation or replacement in areas where there's potential for contaminated soil or groundwater, thou shalt use ductile iron class 52 pipe. So it is very case specific. A prime example is the water main replacements that have been done north of Murdoch, kind of from Algoma to Vinland over the last couple of years. Plymouth, Sheridan, Crane, Roosevelt. Did I miss any more, Deb? There's a couple more streets in the neighborhood. Those have all gone in PVC.
And just for the people at home, the savings is significant.
It's not insignificant. I don't know that it is significant, but it is certainly, generally, I think we've been seeing maybe 5 to 10% on the mains, and maybe about the same on the services in those areas.
It's generally, I believe, from a developer, they were quoted about $3 a foot on a lateral and $6 on the main, while the material costs are substantially less than the ductile iron straight up. There is some additional cost on the installation, I believe, that does offset that, but it is still a savings.
So yep. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because you guys are the experts. I'm just asking the questions because I'm dumb. But everybody's going to PVC, right? I mean, that's the push in the communities surrounding us.
I don't know that everybody is. Like I said, there are cases where you can't do it.
I clearly understand that. So.
So one of the places that I see us having some opportunities is in the residential reconstruction area or the residential new construction areas, primarily single family home residential. That's where I see some opportunities for us to continue with this program. And like I said, that's where we've been using it so far. I'm trying to think, did the last phase of Casey's Meadow, I think they were able to use it as well.
Okay.
So we have started expanding its usage over the last couple of years. We worked with one of our consultants to do kind of a feasibility study of it. And, they certainly recommended some cases where you can use it. Engineers need to review it on a case-by-case basis. One of the other challenges that we've seen is when you start getting into the much larger diameter pipes, 16-inch in particular and up, The pipe wall thicknesses of PVC are so much greater that you actually have to go up a pipe size to get the same cross-sectional area to be able to, get the same water flow. So, that offsets and sometimes more than offsets the cost differential. So those are things that we continue to monitor each year with the CIP and make determinations on the projects.
All right, thanks. And I just want to give a shout out to the water department. I must have the worst meter in the entire road because I come by and replace it all the time, but the guys are always there early and they're dynamite, so thanks.
Yes, Mayor.
Just a question, go back to what's the other class reference you made to the alternative to PVC?
The ductile iron comes in various classes of pipe.
That's metal.
Yeah, ductile iron is a metal pipe.
So my question is just about the PVC thing. Are there communities who are holding back on this because there's an anticipation that it comes back, a number of years from now, that it had PFAS or the BPA or something along those lines was not supporting public health?
Maybe I can help a little bit with that, is that PVC pipe has been around for a number of years. It has some really good purposes, but based on my experience with a lot of communities in the state, it's very much, as James mentions, a engineering decision and a community decision on the choices between PVC and ductile iron. And if you look at the literature, look at the research, you look what's going on out there, it's really a 50-50 split. So I know of many communities that standardized on ductile iron, and that is the material they want to choose. They believe it's best for their community, the most durable, even though it might cost more, they feel that they get more value out of it. There's many communities that, especially smaller, newer communities, that are all PVC, because they don't have larger pipe sizes and things that we would be concerned about with our 16 or 20-inch transmission mains and things like that. So it's really, there's a lot of discussion about it. I think there's some good value at looking at the smaller PVC sizes. We've got a staff member that came from a community that has plenty of experience with PVC, so I relied a lot on his knowledge and expertise with it. And again, I came from a community that we specified ductile iron all the time, but we were up in the frozen north, and we had to be able to thaw pipes. And if you can't really thaw a PVC pipe very easily, so we had a specific need. So it really is there aren't any studies that have shown there's any concerns about the materials of construction for PVC, that there's anything in it that would be of concern as far as things coming out of the pipe into drinking water or creating an unsafe condition. So I mean, it's approved by American Water Works Association, which is one of our professional association as a material of construction. And it has to go through National Sanitation Foundation ratings and a whole bunch of other things for it to be an approved material. So really, my experience is kind of an individual choice, and that that there's certainly some opportunities for us to benefit from the use of PVC in smaller sizes right now.
Soil conditions have a lot to do with it too, in some of our downtown areas, because there's a history of contamination. PVC pipe doesn't work, and that was the example that you and I talked about, Bill. But on the flip side, in areas where there's high acidity in the soil and the clay, it never goes away, the acidity's there, and it eats away at the ductile iron. In those cases, you want to go with the PVC because the PVC is resistant to that corrosive material. So I've preached the religion of PVC because I've had good experiences with it, but there are some places in town where it just isn't going to work.
Not a one-size-fits-all.
That's exactly it, and that's one of the things that, our study that we worked with a consultant on, is like, there's not one answer to that question. You have to look at your project and what considerations there are for that project. And, that's why we've been slowly working in on some of the projects where it does make sense. And, some of the other projects, like Oregon Street, for example, I wouldn't make that recommendation because there are a lot of historic gas stations along Oregon Street. Petroleum is one of the biggest soil and groundwater contaminants that the DNR calls out, and it says, you cannot use PVC. You have to use Class 52 ductile iron in these cases.
More than you probably wanted to know, but
No, actually not.
Continuing on with some of the key accomplishments, completed a risk management plan for the water filtration plant. As the city attorney mentioned, we are working with the town of Oshkosh to resolve issues related to the water service in the vicinity of Winnebago Mental Health Institute. Some of the budget impacts this year, costs related to water main breaks and service breaks on the public side are extremely weather dependent. As we saw in the winter of 2013 to 2014, an extremely cold winter can lead to a significant increase in costs in those areas. The private side lead service program has led to an increase in some of the costs that we have as well. With the code change requiring both the public and private side to replace within 180 days of the other side replacing, there are cases where maybe a private side's got a leak and they have to replace it. We've got 180 days to get our side replaced as well. So we've had some increases there trying to keep up with those, but water distribution staff have been doing a very good job of that. Continuing to see an increase in a lot of regulatory requirements that are going to continue to require additional funding and resources. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Steve to talk about some of those requirements.
All right, thank you. There are 5 kind of broad sweeping regulatory things I want to cover before we kind of get into some enhancements for personnel to help deal with these. The first regulatory requirement is with lead and copper control. The DNR, it has required us that in 2020 we do a corrosion control study to ensure that we are optimizing the corrosion control within the existing pipes. That's going to require that several test loops be constructed of harvested material out of our system, including existing lead service lines that will have to be taken out of the service, put into the plant, and then we can test them with varying degrees of different treated water, between increasing the pH or changing from the phosphates that are added to from an orthophosphate to a phosphoric acid, a variety of things. That's looking at a $225,000 budget impact in 2020 alone.
With no help from the state though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Steve, is it a backflow issue? Are they worried about the backflow? 'Cause there's no lead in our existing infrastructure, is
No,
there?
there's no lead in the city's owned infrastructure, but what they are doing is, we add a corrosion inhibitor chemical into our treated water so that it lines the pipes. So even, the private side services are being lined with this corrosion inhibitor. So what this study is going to do is it's going to build, kind of a small distribution system with a bunch of these pieces of pipe that we've taken out of the system, lead services, copper services, and try them with different treatment techniques. So they're not saying that our corrosion control is not working, but what they are saying is, it's been a while since you looked at it. We want you to look at it again and make sure it's optimized for your source water's chemical composition.
So
Some of this is a reaction to Flint, Michigan.
I figured it was a Flint deal, but that's why I was trying to get my arms around how many, just a percentage of how much lead is still out there. And I know you can't answer that question today, I understand that, but so this next fiscal year, when somebody mines out or replaces their pipes, we're gonna mine that out. We're gonna do it in conjunction with some of our work, because there are some very particular material handling needs that we need to comply with when that piece of pipe is removed from the ground. Right.
So we need to make sure we get enough. We're estimating, we're gonna need 20 to 30 feet of some of these pipe segments to construct these loops. And they have to be handled in a very particular way when they come out of the ground. So we're gonna, be working in conjunction with either one of our construction projects or on some services that water distribution is removing.
And just quick, there is lead still in the public side of the private lead laterals from the main to the curb stop. So we
Yeah,
do
there are
still
still
have
some
some
of those.
public lead out there, even though it's not our mains.
Okay, all right. So it's 5 feet of,
30,
oh, it is, that,
because it goes basically from if the water
the
main's on the
center,
center.
gotcha,
side,
okay.
And did it come to kind of a rough estimate based on a percentage of the 23-some thousand dwelling units being pre 1984?
It was 1958, 59 when lead piping was stopped being used. We had estimated we had about 11,000 dwelling units in the city that were constructed prior to that time. That did not take into account properties that were constructed between about 58, 59, and 84 when,
Might be lead solder or something.
yeah, the solder and some of the fittings as well. So, there's a couple of different timeframes in there. And that's where, as Steve gets into a little bit more of it, we're trying to, build this database that we're being required to build and trying to figure out the best way to do that.
And just, again, my apologies, but everybody's being asked to do that, just not,
It's not just us, no.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Right, from the corrosion control, I think it might be if I remember correctly, it might be the 20 largest in the state are being asked to do it or something.
Okay.
The next topic under lead and copper is the EPA just released their draft of their lead and copper rule revisions. That's going to have a pretty substantial increase on the sampling notification and is going to require us within 3 years to do a validated database of lead service lines that are existing. So that probably means we, at first blush, may need to be getting into all of those 11,000 homes that we suspect may have the lead service and actually validating whether or not it is lead coming up through the floor of the house or not.
You can just come over and do mine right away, because I know mine is lead.
You can request to be in the lead service line replacement program at any time.
Yeah, I know.
So, and pending the results and some of the new requirements for the sampling, that could result in a significant increase in the mandated lead service lateral replacements, and including that the city replace the public side within 3 months of any private side work being done, which is going to be interesting in our climate if someone gets it done in November or December, trying to follow that work up in the streets in the middle of winter. The final item under lead and copper control that the DNR is pushing us into is developing a unidirectional flushing program. This is essentially a designed flushing procedure. I don't know if everyone's seen basically where the water utility staff are out, they open the hydrants and let the water kind of flush out to get clear the lines, get sediment out. This is actually a designed procedure where certain valves through the system are closed to try to force higher velocities through certain pipes and really do a better job of scouring and removing any of that sediment that may be building up within the pipe systems over time. That's it for the lead and copper items. The next.
So those are basically 13, 14, and 15 in the enhancement packages, correct? I think we split those up,
Well, there's still 4 more items coming up to tack on top of those, yes.
but those are the ones that basically you were just talking about.
But these are musts. These are must do's here.
The lead and copper control stuff is gonna, looks like, the EPA is still a draft, but
Right.
there's going to be something coming out.
Okay.
The exact finalization in the end.
So
is
that's
to be
not part of this then, 13, 14, and 15 are.
13, 14, and 15 build upon this and the next few things that Steve's going to talk about.
So the next new regulation that was signed into law in October of 2018 is the America's Water Infrastructure Act, or AWIA. This will require that water utilities develop or update a risk assessment and emergency response plan for the entire water system. James mentioned we have our risk
Management plan for the plant.
the RMP, the risk management plan for the plant, but that deals only with chlorine and ammonia, the dangerous chemicals at the plant. This will essentially span everything from a terrorism attack to what happens if your key line leaving the plant breaks. So it's a full-blown risk management plan for the water utilities. The next item is a DNR mandated item. It came out of our last sanitary survey for the water system. It's a cross-connection inspection. It's going to require an in-property, essentially inspection of every residential property once every 10 years, beginning in 2021. We have approximately 21,400 residential meters. So if you do the math, that's a little over 2,000 a year. Previously, we only needed to do a mailing to these residences once every 3 years. A quote from the company that's currently doing our commercial side cross-connection inspections is $137,000 additional a year to add on the residential properties. Estimated it's about 20% of the time doing the inspections, and 80% of that is actually trying to do the scheduling with the property owners and doing the database management. So it's
So it's a nightmare.
It's an administrative nightmare, yes.
Yes.
So is there any pushback from the League of Municipalities or anything on this, or, I mean, is this just a done deal?
This has been, it's been in the rules for a number of years, and every year we've reported it. The sanitary surveys are done by the DNR area engineers. Well, we've had a change in our area engineer. Someone is retired. We have a new, younger person in that role. And so some of this, essentially, we haven't managed because of resource issues to quite keep up with these things. And it's never been an issue with our previous area engineer. And now they're pushing implementation by the numbers more now. So it's not like this is brand new. It's been out there. They're just taking a stronger stand on us meeting the numbers now.
What if we say no?
Then it will become a deficiency or a significant deficiency in our sanitary survey, and there's other implications.
Ultimately, it could result in an
Regulatory.
administrative order.
Yeah. It's on the books, it's in the codes.
So how many other community, and again, if you guys don't have these numbers or facts, I'm sorry, I didn't see this one coming today, but, so how many other communities are physically doing this, what we're proposing to do?
Most.
Okay.
And again, a lot of it depends on how their area engineer views compliance. And again, we have had, I'll be honest with you, someone that's been reasonable in understanding that we've had other issues with lead services and things like that, or been staff resource issues. And it's not like we're not making progress, we're not meeting the exact numbers. Now they want us to meet the exact numbers, and that means we're gonna have to allocate more resources to these types of things. So we don't have the flexibility that we used to have before.
Kind of, the cross connection actually ties very well into the next regulatory item of the meter change out. This is again identified in our DNR sanitary survey, as well as the requirements in the PSC. We are required to test or change the meters every 10 years per the PSC and the DNR. Prior to 2014, the brass meters that we had in there were manufactured, then they had lead within the brass. A low limit, but did have brass in there. Or lead,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
thank you. So what has come about recently is that we can no longer remove one of those brass meters from a house, take it to the water distribution facility, test it, and then install it into another property. They have said that if you take a brass meter that contains lead out of service, it can only go back in that exact property again. That means twice the trips, twice the times for people being home. It's not going to be a very efficient means to do it.
You might as well retire the meter.
Might as well retire the meter. The new meters are $125.
You may recall at our meeting that we had here with, regarding meters, that person was accusing us of doing something improper because we didn't put the exact meter back in. It's like, why would we if it takes
Right.
double the work and everything?
Right.
Or it's cheaper to throw it.
We put them on a
Retire
test
it.
bench, and if they test and meet the requirements, percentage plus or minus, then we can put them back in. They meet the PSC requirements for testing. So, and PSC has taken kind of a new stance. They never used to require construction authorizations for meter replacements, and now they are. So in order for us to address these brass meters, and the reason these brass meters went in was because they were the cheaper meter at the time. So we were going with the cheapest meter. And eventually, when the plastic meters came out, they were more expensive. And then as the cost dropped, plastic meters became the cheaper alternative. So we still have these brass meters, and because of the brass and lead rules and lead and copper rules, it would be better for us to replace those brass meters than to try and put them back in.
And I know all about trip charges, so we're talking trip charges. Take it out, test it, bring it back, you might as well toss it, and we've saved money all the way along. Okay. Thank you.
And then the last big regulatory item is the clear well replacement project. We are still working through the PSC for that, but essentially, The current underground clear wells at the water filtration plant don't meet DNR code. They've been in our sanitary survey for a number of years as we've been working toward trying to get them replaced. And the prior area engineer was patient with us in doing that. The new area engineer is not being quite so patient and wants us to have those undergoing. So we are continuing to work through the PSC, but that is going to be a major project to push through and get underway in the near term. So that's really the end of the 5 big regulatory hurdles we have. And now I've got to kind of have some, to go over each of the enhancements that we have in there, kind of give you a little bit more of the background behind those and why we're asking for them.
Steve, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, and I want to apologize to all the other council members. This is my first budget meeting, but, so, is the DNR allowing us to phase some of this stuff in, or is this, it's all or nothing? I mean,
The clear wells are 100 years old.
okay,
They do need to be replaced, so
Okay,
that,
that
I
answers
would
my
just say the
question.
clear well
All right.
project is something that
Gotcha.
was in our asset management plan. And they, when they changed the regulatory requirement for separation between groundwater and the bottom of the tanks, that's kind of what triggered this. So that rule's been on the books for a number of years.
And they've been patient with us on that one. It's just, we've had some hiccups working through the Public Service Commission with that project, and we had a meeting with them again a few weeks back, just trying to make sure we understand where things are at and presenting some of the additional information they've been asking.
and thank you all for being so well informed, so appreciate it.
That was the same project, you guys.
It's been getting pushed back.
Yeah, there was even some designs, the neighbors,
Yes,
weighed in.
we'd had a
It was very positively received, if I remember right.
Until we get to the PSC.
The
Public ser-
And I'm familiar with those guys too.
We got the Public Service Commission and the DNR kind of arguing
Ping
and
pong,
putting us in the
yeah.
middle, and it's like, DNR saying, well, you gotta do a clear well. Well, we know we gotta do a clear well. PSC's like, well, this is too much, and going back and forth trying to reconcile their two state agencies.
And one thing I want to point out, I know we'll talk about it in the CIP next week, but, that's not going to be, straight up borrowed for. That'll use Safe Drinking Water loan program, so it's a different funding mechanism for that, and we'll talk more about that next week.
Okay.
All right, so the first position that we're requesting is an additional water filtration operator to help meet the regulatory requirements at the plant and create a better work environment for the water filtration plant operators. Currently, there are only 5 operators to run that plant 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. By comparison, the wastewater plant has 8 operators for the same schedule. The water filtration plant currently uses a 5-week rotation schedule. That requires the operators to work 7 days in a row, 2 out of the 5 weeks, and 6 days in a row another week. They work 3 out of 5 every 5 weekends, and there's a single operator on shift every time but during first shift, when the relief operator also works with them, assuming no one else is off on vacation, sick leave, medical leave, any other issues. The shift changes occur at staggered times throughout the week.
Meaning you could be working multiple shifts within a calendar.
You may,
So oversimplify this for us. I mean, so adding the one position does what?
I'll jump down to it here in a few
thanks.
minutes, how's that?
All right, sorry,
and then-
Steve.
Nope, that's fine.
Yep.
I'm just trying to cut to the chase, I appreciate that. And then, there's, out of the 5-week schedule, an operator's only on first shift, possible first shift 2 weeks. Again, one of those is relief if they're not pushed elsewhere. Some of the other issues with this schedule, it requires one of the maintenance mechanics to cover one of the operating shifts every week. Since the beginning of 2016, maintenance shifts have covered 388 of the operator shifts due to call-ins or sick leave, other items, in addition to 195 of the operator shifts that they were scheduled to cover. So nearly, 400, 500, almost
600.
Almost 600 shifts missed of maintenance time during that point in time. You don't see it show up in overtime because the maintenance operators are doing it as part of their duties, but we're losing maintenance hours at the plant.
So basically, a third of the maintenance hours are gone if you're using a 2,100 hour.
There are 5 maintenance
Oh,
operators.
so right.
But so, yeah, so we're losing a lot of their time there. In addition, the relief operator is supposed to be scheduled to train with the maintenance staff when time is there. Of the possible 260 cross-training shift hours that are available, we lose about 135 of those annually, just by the time you factor in conservative 3 weeks vacation, 5 sick days, training. So we're losing half of our cross-training time with that. One of the last big issues is many of the water filtration, thank you. Water filtration plant operators are nearing the age and years of service for retirement. There's likely to be three people that will be retiring within the next 2 years. That's very significant because it can take 6 to 9 months to get a new operator up to speed to just be able to operate the plant without additional assistance because of the ever-changing conditions of Lake Winnebago, and 12 to 24 months before they really fully understand our water plant and its operations.
And that doesn't take into account the amount of time it takes us to recruit. We've had several challenging recruitments filling water filtration plant operators.
What's a terrible schedule? It's-
I think
who
we've
would
just
wanna
gotten to
work-
that point,
I know
Steve.
nothing about water filtration, but I can tell you that's the worst
don't wanna
schedule
work
I've
that
ever heard of.
schedule?
Yeah.
All right, so to your point, with a 6 people and working on developing a 6-week rotation schedule, it puts the maximum days work in a row at 4, every other weekend off, provides a second operator on the majority of the weekday shifts, which will reduce the call-ins when a second staff person is needed for someone to be able to enter the chlorine room or the ammonia room for safety reasons. And then you work the same shift for 2 weeks straight. So it's not this ping pong bouncing. You work first shift for 2 weeks, second shift for 2 weeks, third shift for 2 weeks, and then you're back to first shift. This will allow maintenance staff to perform significantly more maintenance and increase the cross-training time out of that.
So how much does this position save us? Because I'm assuming a lot of their income is overtime wages.
It's not, because it's being covered by the maintenance staff, so we're
Right.
losing it as maintenance hours. We're not
It's
seeing
kind of
it.
becoming a bit of deferred maintenance issues, which, we're starting to see in some of our CIP requests for needing to do a few things. So it's kind of some hidden costs, if you will, because they're not as easy to see like you would see with overtime.
But these workers are getting the overtime money, obviously.
No.
No,
The salary.
They're not.
They're being taken, like, when a maintenance staff is,
Or you're just filling it with.
they're being taken out of their maintenance duties and put into an operator duty for the day. So they're generally not working extra hours or overtime hours. They're just not doing their job, if you will, yes.
Yeah, I heard you say overtime too. I'm sure that's why Jake.
Yeah,
Just
so,
looked at you.
I had.
so is this, I'm assuming this is all, this data is all coming through the realignment that we've had over there recently and doing some things?
The operator positions, this is something that Steve Brand, myself, and Brad Rokas, the plant manager, have been talking about for a couple of years. Finally now with some of the reorganization and, having Steve being a little more available to provide time over there, and with our management analyst position, being able to help us out with analyzing the schedules and everything, we're finally able to look at it enough to bring this forward.
Yeah, that's worse than any swing shift or anything. I mean, that's just terrible.
And that one,
And that's when they're not down an operator down to
Right.
4 like they've been for numerous times with medical leave, so
Right.
it's even worse at 4.
We had 2 down for a while on medical leave at one time this year, so
Yeah.
confirming that's covered under the utility. If we,
that is a utility cost completely, yes.
thank you.
Yeah, all of these enhancements that Steve is
Are
gonna
under
talk
the
about right
utility.
now are utility costs only, they're not general fund impacted.
So the second enhancement we're seeking is an office assistant for the water distribution office. This staff person would support many of the regulatory requirements being added, as well as serve as a backup for the current staff person that is out there. When this staff person's gone, the supervisors are picking up and doing their daily duties of answering the phone, timesheets, payroll, items such as that. This person could handle scheduling and management of the meter replacement program for the cross-connection program and the cross-connection program. So that we're thinking that we can double duty doing the meter replacement and the cross-connection control program in one by getting, if we have to replace the meter, we can have our staff people trained, and we can do it a 2-for-1, where we're not gonna have to bother the resident and the homeowner for 2 separate trips. If we contracted this out, we can get it done in a single trip. So the big
So
benefits-
we're just forecasting the workload based on the new DNR requirement to test.
This is, well, it's an old DNR
My,
requirement.
my apologies, but yes, okay.
So we've got that, significantly less cost than the contract service. We're looking at about $66,000 for a office assistant versus the $137,000 annually for the contract service. We have to get our staff trained to do the cross-connection inspection a little bit while they're doing the meter training, but that should be very achievable to do.
So you're comfortable that this position pays for itself and saves us some money?
Yes.
Okay.
They'll move the meter change-out workflow from utility accounting back out to water distribution. It will provide a better workflow and interaction between the 2 groups that are doing that out there versus having to run paper notes back and forth between distribution and utility accounting up here for any of the meter change-outs. We do expect that this position really wouldn't be needed until the second half of this upcoming year. We'd like to get this person in place, have them help develop the database, get used to the city, so that in 2021, when we have to start doing the cross-connection program, that we've got everything set up to go.
I get it. Sorry, I'm dragging this out, guys.
And one last thing this person can help with is tracking the unidirectional flushing and the valve turning records for that. So we'll really be able to get some additional use out of this person. The final enhancement that's requested is an operations supervisor at the water filtration plant. Pardon me, I keep wanting to say wastewater today. Currently, the water filtration plant manager is the only supervisor located on site at the water filtration plant. With the increasing regulatory requirements coming, the plant manager will be heavily involved in the day-to-day oversight of the corrosion control study and the clear well projects. The new water plant's now 20 years old. Many of the components within that plant are the same age. An asset management plan was developed in 2015, and most of those projects identified have been completed. We need to do a new asset management plan. The additional supervisor will allow for the plant manager to focus on planning and facility maintenance, while the supervisor can oversee the day-to-day operations of the plant. The supervisor would need to be a certified operator, and this could help us cover those operator shifts and preventing maintenance staff from needing to cover those as well.
I think one thing we didn't bring up that's very important to point out too, Steve kind of presented them in an order to you. That order that he presented them, that's our priority order. We feel the most important thing is to get that operator over at water filtration to help take some load off. Given the regulatory issues, we feel that the additional administrative support at water distribution is our next most important priority, because we're going to need that person in place to be able to help us manage those regulatory issues. And then, this is kind of our third priority position, if you will. All right. Any other questions on that right now? All right. Well, we'll touch real quickly. We got a couple of water utility vehicles in the CIP. We got a tandem axle dump truck and a half-ton pickup truck.
James, page?
I'm trying to get there right now, as a matter of fact. Looks like page 39. Water distribution certainly does not use as many large trucks as Streets Division, but they do use them on a very regular basis. So again, with Travis doing the analysis on vehicle maintenance costs and efforts, is recommending one tandem axle truck and then a new half-ton pickup truck. Bobby, come on up. Providing additional information on the pickup truck you're looking for there?
All right. Our pickups and our vans go out every day. Our dump trucks go out every day. There's depending on for sure what we do, but we don't have any extra vehicles in our shop at all. What we're trying to do also is we're looking to get a seasonal hydrant flusher also. to take some of that seasonal hydrant flushing off our hands. We would not have another vehicle for this person. We have got a 3/4 ton pickup that right now the assistant manager uses. What we'd like to do is add that into the fleet, and that way it can be used for other things other than the flusher, but.
So you're
it's-
proposing the half-ton to be for the assistant
For the
manager and then the
assistant, yes.
3/4 ton into the rest
Yes.
of the fleet? Okay.
So that way that 3/4 ton could be used to pull some of the
Pull trailers or
that
haul,
we have also.
haul other parts and stuff around?
Yes.
Okay. Any
Can-
questions?
Can we have a community vehicle sitting at city garage if it's not being used all the time? I mean, is that possible? Or 2 community vehicles, meaning anybody who needs them can take them, whether it's,
I don't know, Russ, if you want to weigh in on the how we would finance something like that from the various funds.
And
well, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So instead of every department having a spare vehicle, we have 2 spare vehicles.
this is a vehicle that would go out every day from maybe April through October even.
Okay.
And it gets used a lot for service calls and things like that, so if the crew's out on a service call, they run into a particular situation and stuff, Ryan needs to go out and check on things, or needs to grab parts or something, they call up and say, we need a sleeve or something, we don't have it with us. You know, so it does get a lot of use on a pretty regular basis.
That's fine. If we're gonna use a vehicle every day, you should have them. But what I'm saying is, instead of retiring some of these old vehicles, maybe we keep 2 pickup trucks around, you know, that are sitting at city garage that can be, you know, hey, we've got 2 vehicles just sitting here. Let's use one of these, and as we retire a vehicle, you know what I mean? Don't pedal it off.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and it's something that's on my list. Just looking at more of the accounting for a central equipment agency. We've kind of made some steps, the city's made some steps in that direction, but I'd like to take a little bit more, a better and closer review on the fiscal impacts on that. But I think there's some merit to trying to, you know, account for some of the vehicles more as a central equipment agency, including the utilities.
Okay. So, and I don't wanna make this
Not
complicated.
impossible.
I just wanna say, leave 2 rusty pickup trucks there, and when any department needs one, they can grab one and go. That's all I'm saying.
Rusty pickups we got.
But if this vehicle is going out every day, I don't wanna,
Yes, it would be.
gotcha.
But I think the
Similar-
pool vehicle concept is something.
I like the-
That.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
the thought process basically he's trying to, that he's getting around to is the same thing that they do with the ambulances and fire. You've got your first line, you've got your second line, you're pushing them back. They're not used all the time, but they still can be used
Yeah.
for the right circumstances.
And this vehicle we're talking about, I think it's in that 8 to 9 years range, but it doesn't have a lot of miles on it, of course. So that's something that could stay
Right.
fleet for a number of years yet.
Right.
So.
Okay, any other questions on water utility? Thank you, Bob. All right, then moving on to wastewater or sewer utility on page 288 of your budget book. Again, you know, sewer utility services, you know, I'll say support economic development because, you know, we gotta be able to haul the waste away, improve and maintain our infrastructure and strengthen our neighborhoods. Sections of the CIP, their primary mission again is to protect health and safety by providing effective treatment of sanitary wastes generated by properties within the city's sewer service area. In this case, the city's sewer service area does include several of our surrounding townships. We receive flow from the town of Algoma Sanitary District, town of Black Wolf Sanitary District, and 3 districts within the town of Oshkosh. Shangri-La, Island View, and Sunset Point, and possibly soon to be the Winnebago area. The sewer utility continues to focus on reducing our clear water inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewer system. To date, these effects have had a very positive impact on wet weather flows managed by the wastewater treatment plant. We have had an exceptionally wet last 12 months. And I do not believe they've hit 100 MGD at any point in time.
I think we had one of the larger events. I think it was when we had like 3 events back to back over like a 5-day period that we may have peaked at 100, but it was a significantly shorter term peak than we've seen in the past. And with the last wet weather events, we didn't see, we're up like 2 or 3 times base flow, which to us is where we would like to be all the time with the wet weather events. So we're seeing some improvements, because I think we're at 32 or 34 inches annually, and I think we're already at 42 inches.
Yeah,
for our total inches of rain, so.
We've had an exceptionally wet 12 months, and, as
But
Steve said, we've maybe pegged the meters once, whereas, 10 years ago, they'd have been pegged most of the summer. So we've had significant improvement in reducing that clear water getting to the plants.
Does that relate directly to cost savings and chemicals and treatment and everything?
It not as significantly as you might think, but it does help us, because it only takes us one event, and we're stuck with our demand charge for the next 12 months on the electrical side. So it only takes one event to push that up. But yes, it does. It reflects in slightly lower costs in any of those areas and helps us smooth out costs over time.
Well, one way to think about it, the clear water really doesn't require a lot of treatment, so it dilutes what's coming in. But the other thing that it does is, as we get into dealing with the phosphorus TMDL regulations, reducing our overall flows coming into the plant will help us with our compliance issues on the back end. So that's where it becomes very important. And it also helps us keep from overloading the system, which reduces the number of potential backup issues that we may have. At the plant, completed one phase of the influent valve replacement project, completed the design and awarded the bid for the digester mixing system upgrade project. We mentioned earlier with the engineering division, completed phase 2 of the sanitary interceptor project in Oregon Street. As I mentioned earlier, that will ultimately continue all the way down to Ripple Avenue over the next several years. And completed a risk management plan for the treatment plant. Some of the things, as you look at this particular budget, you see some fluctuation across various portions of the utility based on labor costs, primarily as it relates to the maintenance staff, because if they're working on pump stations, then they charge the pump station versus the plant. So those costs move around across the divisions, but as a whole, not a significant change within the budget. And we continue to see an increase in regulatory requirements requiring additional funding and resources. And we mentioned the phosphorus, the TMDL. That certainly has been on our radar for several years now. City Attorney Lawrenson mentioned, we've been working with the DNR related to discharge permit legal challenges, as well as we've been working through those things. Obviously, the PFAS issue has been in the forefront here recently. We continue to work with the department to try to gain a better understanding of what exactly they are looking for on that front as well. So a lot of upcoming regulatory issues that we continue to try to stay on top of to make sure that we're getting the best information we can and complying with those regulations. Any specific questions there? Yes, Mayor.
I just have a quick question, and that is on the recovery time. So this is measured in hours, so we actually improved our recovery time?
Yes.
So that's good. That's
some
good
of,
news, right?
That's some of the things by reducing the inflow and infiltration into the plant. That means those plant flows are returning to a more normal state in a quicker time frame. So that's what that means. Any other questions there? Otherwise, we do have a couple of vehicles on page 39 of the CIP. We got a pickup truck and then a mini dump truck. I think that mini dump truck, that's just the box.
That's just the box.
That's the one for the grit, right, Steve?
Correct, yes.
So if, as a part of the treatment process, there's a screw classifier that removes some of the grit to keep some of the grit out of the rest of the process, and it just dumps into the box. So this truck is parked underneath there and just collecting wet, sloppy grit, so the box needs to be replaced.
Probably rusted out.
Yes, and then there's a pickup truck that's up for replacement as well, based on Travis's recommendations from his maintenance records. All right, if there's nothing else on that, we will move forward into the stormwater utility. Thank you, Steve. Stormwater utility budget starts on page 293 of your budget book. Stormwater utility services fall generally within the improve and maintain our infrastructure, but they do have some crossover into other sections of the city strategic plan as well, as the primary mission is to reduce flooding and manage stormwater throughout the city. Stormwater utility is generally responsible for ensuring that the city complies with the requirements of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources municipal separate storm sewer system permits. Permits issued by the DNR in accordance with the Federal Clean Water Act. City Attorney Lawrenson mentioned we've been working with outside counsel, supplying comments to a new permit that was just issued this year as well. Some of the key accomplishments: completed construction of the Libby Nicolay North Main Street detention area, North Main Street area detention basin. And we are completing the second year of a 2-year leaf study with the USGS this year. Initially, USGS had conducted a leaf study in Madison. They've expanded that study and are gathering additional information in Oshkosh and Fond du Lac. The purpose of this study is to try to better quantify the reduction of phosphorus discharging in our stormwater through our leaf collection program. So by getting the leaves picked up weekly and, having them raked onto the terrace instead of into the streets, so it's trying to quantify, what that phosphorus reduction is, so that as we look at our compliance with not only the DNR permit but also the TMDL as it relates to phosphorus, trying to get us some more credit, if you will, for the practices we already do, so that it can reduce our overall costs later on of compliance. Look like you had a question, Mayor.
Oh, I'm just rolling in my head. Maybe our tree planting strategy goes more to evergreen versus the deciduous, depending on the outcome of that study.
You're gonna pit two departments against each other right there, I think.
Primary budgetary impact in the stormwater utility is related to principal and interest payments. Stormwater utility is still a relatively young utility, so we are still, with all the capital projects, taking on more debt than is currently being retired. So that's the major impact on the budget. From a major equipment standpoint, we do have one street sweeper that is proposed for replacement in the CIP. Shows up on page 38 of the CIP book.
Is that the same one that does the leaf pickup?
No, leaf pickup. The street sweepers will follow through after leaf pickup generally. But a lot of the equipment used for leaf pickup is, we have the vacuum attachments that are installed on our tandem axle trucks. We also use the jetter vac for a lot of that. And then when we have cases where there's a lot of leaves and we have to rake them out into the street and pick them up with a loader and dump truck, then we have the street sweepers come through afterwards and sweep up after them to clean up anything that's left over. So if there's no further questions than that, I believe I've got through all of my budget items.
I do have one thing we didn't, Jesse Balcom's
Yeah.
here. So Jesse Balcom's the management analysis that James mentioned a couple of times. She started with us in July, so just wanted to introduce her quick to council here.
Hello down there.
Yes, Jesse's, as a part of our reorganization, we changed the classification of a position, and Jesse's position will be split across both the water and wastewater utilities, providing a lot of additional support for Steve in his new role as well. And as I mentioned, Jesse was the one who was working on trying to develop a new shift schedule for the water filtration plant if we get the operator position, and trying to show what those benefits are. So, yeah, Jesse, I don't think she was here for a week and we threw the budgets at her, and she jumped in wholeheartedly, and I believe one of the last comments she made to me as we were finalizing them was, "I'm really looking forward to next year's budget." And
she's a little crazy,
I'm sorry.
She comes by it honestly. She answers the second half of the question. We had Russ join our staff as finance director, former city manager. Jesse's former village administrator for the village of Slinger. So she comes with a lot of a lot of experience and credibility, and she's helping out Public Works, and we're appreciative to have her along.
So budget and scheduling, lucky you.
Oh, yeah.
So is there room in that ladder, career ladder for operations supervisor?
If she wants to get certified.
I'd be more worried about my career ladder. Former administrator, so she's a proud graduate of the University of Kansas City Management Program as well. So that's yeah. There we go.
Here,
Now
what
we're
did I
talking.
hear? I hear
I got my
something about
Jayhawk stuff in my
secession
office.
program?
Don't even think about it. No more Jayhawk stuff around here.
No, but yes, thank you, Steve, for bringing that up. She has been a very valuable addition to the department so far, and certainly working on a lot of special things for Steve and I to get us going right now. And was jumped in. Previously, utility accounting manager Gabrielson would have been very involved in the utilities budgets. But with everything that he's been working on, just didn't have the availability, and I would have maybe preferred having Jessie for about 6 months before we threw the budget at her, but with the time she was able to get here, her second week here, we threw the budget at her.
6 days was close enough.
6 days, 6 months, yeah. But no, she jumped right in and asked a lot of great questions and spent a lot of time looking at them. And
I would be worried.
Yeah, that's as well I should be. We've got some great folks that we've added to our staff. And Jesse's
And you're
one
getting a
of
little long in the tooth.
them. Yeah, thank you.
all right, well, I think I'm standing
On that
between
note, I
you
need
and
a
a break
break.
right now, so.
Thank you very much.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're scheduled for a break now, if you want.
Yes.
If you want to, if you'd
Thank
like.
you for
All
letting
right.
us.
Yeah, library's not even here yet.
Maybe start finance.
Well, thank you
I
for
was gonna
shortening the
say,
lunch
that's
so I can
normally-
get you all caught up.
So, hey, guys, why don't we do 10 minutes and then we can get finance and maybe get out of here earlier?
I'm okay with that.
No longer?
No, we're gonna reverse the order.
Okay.
If we finish and get back here by 3 o'clock.
That's fine.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
Okay, finance. So in the general fund, on page 34, is the finance department. And, you know, basically the finance department's here to assist a lot of the other departments. You know, we're here to assist in probably the effective government side of things. Couple of things to note on the finance budget. The number of receipts that we're processing went up quite a bit in May because we went from the quarterly billing to monthly billing. So activity in our collection side has increased quite a bit. The number of calls that are coming in from the customers for utility billing questions are up. And the invoices are kind of processed are pretty much where they have been. There's nothing really new there. On the budget side, the big thing to note, what I ended up putting in the budget was moving our expenses for our utility billing collection folks. They used to be recorded directly in this budget, and then we would do a journal entry to put them into the utilities. Well, that showed as a revenue and expenditure in the general fund, but to do away with that, we just are going to expense them right to the utility. That way we don't have this kind of double accounting in the general fund. Plus it helps us out in the expenditure restraint program calculation. So we moved that over. So we talked about some of the other payroll stuff and the allocation of charges for our administration on healthcare. So those are the big changes. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I don't on any of that stuff. The one thing I do have, and I can't emphasize this enough, it's a real pet peeve for me, and not your fault, you're new, but I'm gonna blame you anyways.
Okay.
What I'd really like to see out of both of you guys this next year is an emphasis on getting as much ACH or credit card payment on those bills. I mean, we incurred an additional $250,000 a year by going to monthly billing. And it's frustrating to me that nobody saw that coming, and the impact on the staff. So, I mean, we're killing everybody here by going to these monthly water bills, and then our billing costs quadruple. So that's what I'm gonna give you guys as a goal, is to have a marketing campaign, or we raise the paper bill $2 an invoice to force people into ACH and this stuff. I mean, that's phone money, guys. If we can get 70% of these people paying online, ACH, or do we take credit card for water bills? I don't even know, right?
We do,
Okay.
but there's an add-on fee, but that add-on fee has gone down because of the amount of volume. I certainly understand it, and we are trying to do a little bit more public awareness on the ACH because that helps everybody out. We're also looking at the possibility of actually going out and bidding our banking services that would free up a lockbox collection system that we're currently not taking advantage of because of the cost. So there's a lot of things we can do on the collection side, and we're looking at all those avenues.
And again, I know a little bit about billing. Lockbox is still expensive.
Yep.
Including a driver, a hard push on the email billing.
Yeah.
That in itself, that's to Bill's point, that's where our massive cost increase came from.
Yeah.
And so a drive, an actual public service drive on getting that to be a much higher percentage. And from a personal point, and I don't know where we were before the implementation of this in terms of email billing.
We couldn't.
Or even just, and where like a benchmark should be, but it's got to be. We've got to have a goal of a much higher compliance on that.
I would give you guys, I mean, I would fully support hiring a telemarketing firm to call every one of our customers and try to, get them converted over this. And I think we all would agree that, hiring somebody to call all of our customers and drive this process would be money well spent and recovered immediately.
If we could, would you agree though that that would be more feasible if people could select their billing date? Because a number of those people who are on fixed income are not able, they need to be able to pay, when they get paid. I don't know if that's even within the realm, because it seems like we have a very strange billing cycle.
It's like most people on Social Security don't even get paid until the 3rd or 4th of the month.
And we've kind of struggled internally with that whole the cycle from going from quarterly to monthly and trying to stay on a particular pattern. And I think one of the difficulties is that we didn't, the staff at the time didn't see is, the staff was pretty much accustomed to starting a process from start to finish and closing out that billing cycle. Now we have 3 billing cycles, with potential of having 3 billing cycles being open at one time. So we're doing the meter changes, we're doing the preparation of the bills, we're sending them out, and then we're starting that process again while this is still having calls and questions come in. So we're kind of working through that. We're trying to stick to that schedule that the customers have come to anticipate. We want to just keep working on that.
And I want to caution everybody, don't let fear drive your decision-making, because personal experience, we used a billing company, they got bought out by another company, we signed a contract with them. They were not terrible, but they sold the fear factor. Don't switch. It'll be all this grief over and over again. We switched to a third company, and we've never been happier. So don't let fear be part of making a better decision.
We absolutely need to push more people. It wasn't until this whole monthly billing thing started to come out that I think we realized how few people took advantage of these billing opportunities. Now, not everybody wants to do it on a credit card, but the ACH is such an easy thing for anybody who has a checking account. So I think there's opportunities to do that, and we're certainly willing to look at.
Where are we at with, excuse me, Mayor?
Just at one point, though, we were gonna see how we were able to increase those uncollected water bills that ended up going on the tax or the assessment. And I think that was one of the other things that was pushing the monthly, was that because it was quarterly, it was harder for people to pay those bigger amounts. So at what point will we be able to see whether or not that has happened?
It'll probably take another full year, because you're still gonna have a handful of quarterly bills in fact, most of this year's, because they were put on the tax roll this month. They just don't know if they're on the tax roll yet, but they're on the tax roll.
Next month.
Next month, okay.
Yeah, but they got notices. Everybody got notices that had
I
delinquent.
pay my water bill annually on my taxes.
Yeah. What,
So,
you had mentioned that you were looking into budget billing. People could get on a budget plan. Where are we at with that?
We're still looking at options with the Public Service Commission.
Okay.
Making sure that water and sewer utilities can do that.
Okay.
That hasn't come off our radar screen at all.
Okay.
And then there's a couple other comments that came up, and we're still working on the whole billing file and structure and getting that approved by the Public Service Commission.
Okay, good.
and meanwhile, we're working on that Aquahawk program. I don't know how much we.
Aquahawk, is it some scuba diver diving?
We haven't
around?
presented.
Okay, we're still working on the issue about the notification process for people, how they're using if they're overusing their water.
It's actually a notification system that people can look at their billing tendencies real time, and it'll help answer the questions. It's that bridge between the bill and excess usage and those type of things.
Well, we do know that we're able to do that change in the billing rate because Watertown is doing it.
Right.
And Ellers actually was the one, and I confirmed that with them, and
The Lifeline.
they don't call it Lifeline, but it is a different tiered rate for the first 2,000 gallons.
Yep.
And then they charge a different amount for anything over that
Right.
use. It's kind of more of a matter of, are we allowed to do that in terms of what our numbers are? Is that what you're saying, that we're waiting?
There's two different things going on.
Okay.
The different tier structure with, and I think the term is used, Lifeline rate, that's being utilized. The budget billing that the electric utilities use,
Okay.
that's a separate step, and we're still exploring that. That's an option that's available to electric utilities. I'm not sure if it's available to water utilities.
So we're pursuing all those things that happened as a result of the changeover. We're pursuing all of them. So as we learn about those things.
And we should have a presentation to council before the end of the year on this whole technology that can help bridge the consumption and billing and notification to customers more quickly, based on technology to get it into the hands of the customers quicker. So that's pretty much the finance general fund budget. We also have a small budget on page 48. We track our outside audit in a separate department. It's Department 0140. We don't have any key performance indicators. It's simply accounting for the auditing fees. Jennifer works pretty much with the outside auditing firm.
That's CLA.
Yeah. Yep.
What is that dollar?
That went
amount?
over
We
her
haven't
head. She didn't
looked
get
at it.
26.5.
26.5.
Did you get it?
General fund portion.
Okay. That's, there's more there, but that's just the general fund
Correct.
portion?
The waters, the utilities get theirs,
Separate, okay.
which is
Right.
part of their budgets.
Right.
And then Jennifer also helps out quite a bit on the debt, and I talked a little bit this morning about our debt service. I'm going to turn over to Jennifer and let her say a few comments about the debt service schedule and where we're at with the debt.
Where
side
are
of
we at?
things.
What page are we at?
Page
259.
259.
Should have a big tab that says debt service on the side.
That's because it's a lot of debt. That's why the tab is so big.
Oh, stop it.
So
Oh,
one
he's
of the-
wound now.
Yeah, I got them all worked up.
So one of the things that Russ had mentioned this morning is that we had a $500,000 reduction in the debt service payments, which then allowed another $500,000 in the debt reduction in the debt service levy portion for property taxes. That was attributed to us doing our refunding this year, which was money to be put aside for interest payments for 2020. So that's why there was that reduction.
Okay.
Okay? Which I didn't initially have figured into my numbers. I'm kind of a worst case scenario person.
Hey, hey, we all appreciate that, trust me.
So if you look on page 261, basically it spells out all of the notes that we have outstanding that will be paid in 2020 that are attributed to the general fund, general obligation debt. On the top, you'll notice the revenues, which is $12,070,000 is coming in from property tax revenues, and then any geo debt or other departments within or other funds within the city get charged for those debt payments and come into the debt service fund as a revenue to offset the costs.
So those are showing as transfers coming in from other funds, basically.
And then outside of the actual debt payments, we do have some investments that we have to hold that we also earn interest on to offset some of the debt payments. Other than that, that's pretty self-explanatory for debt service.
The assets that we hang on to, can we minimalize those anymore? Because we're not getting any money for them, right? I mean,
Correct,
we're getting dirt, so I mean, can we minimize that, pay down some debt that we're, you know what I'm saying? Can we go to bare bones minimum on anything here?
Yeah, we have to look, and we constantly look at the callable portions on our debt.
All right.
Normally, when you issue the debt on a municipal side of things, your first couple of years are not callable. I mean, you have to
Right.
keep it in the market for a number of years. But when they're callable and the conditions are right, we'll take a look at doing that.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah, you're right. But we also have proceeds that are intended for capital projects that haven't been spent yet.
Okay.
But there are restrictions on how much you can invest that money in for anyways.
Okay.
And there are certain spend down requirements as well. So we put together the debt service schedules, pretty self-explanatory, just basically making principal and interest payments on all the different bonds and notes that are out there. There's another group of funds on the tab side. If you look at other funds, we have some trust funds that start on page 311. And Jennifer helps out the accounting department pretty much on accounting for these other trusts that are out there. I don't know if there's any questions or any comments that you have, Jennifer, on the trust funds.
This is pretty much a stable set of funds that get invested and earn a certain percent of interest, whether it's regards to library, museum, parks and rec. It's monies that people have left in the city's name to be used for specific purposes. At the end of the year, we also prepare a trust report that explains the funds and what the intended purposes were and how the funds were spent. And just making sure that they are invested properly and that they're earning,
Nothing.
applicable interest, and trying to maximize those within the legal investment vehicles that we're allowed to use as a municipality.
So these are all those trusts that we typically read at the beginning of our council packets with that financial.
On the cash report,
Yeah,
yes.
cash report and
Mhm.
everything.
The fund usually stays right between 10 and 11 million on an annual basis. And then we also have, on one page before that, we have the police and fire pension fund, which I also take care of. Basically, this was monies that were put aside to fund fire and police pensions. We currently have one person left on this, and this will cease once that person passes. When I started, I think we had 4. Now we're down to 1. So.
And then the state takes over from there then?
These are pre-WRS.
Yes.
Okay.
These are really old
Okay.
folks.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, God bless them for hanging on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 5,200 a year.
Yeah.
So.
This is just making sure our liability is fully funded on those, basically.
Yes. Yep.
There's a recent legislation I thought that was brought forward regarding families of police or fire in the past and potentially requiring us to, or requiring them to be paid or continued, was it health insurance or?
Yeah, it would be lifetime health insurance.
So would that end up in like a special fund like this, or would it be kind of all lumped in? Is that even?
For the city of Oshkosh, and we'd probably run that through our insurance fund. And that's really something that's not in our city budget for 2020, but it's a new piece of legislation that's going to be a mandate. Basically, it's requiring payment of health insurance for widows of people who die in the line of duty. The state, as it's passed, has promised to pay for it.
Oh, there we go.
That was one.
Is it my understanding though, it was already in place for one of the.
Fire.
It was already in place for fire.
But now it's
just
police.
adding it for police. So
Yes.
it already was in place for half of the protective.
Recently, that's been fairly recent as well. But so that's a piece of legislation that was enacted in 2019, and we'll have to figure out how we go forward for that. But that's another.
I would almost think you could count them almost as an employee in a sense, you know what I mean, for paying their insurance, as numbers.
Yeah.
Amount numbers of
Yeah.
people under the city's health insurance, just the accounting.
Hopefully we're
But you might put an
Hopefully
asterisk.
we never have to be in that.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly, but I can tell you one thing, the state's gonna pawn this off on the municipalities in no time, just like they do everything else, so.
Once they hit a rough patch of road, then typically they'll say, well, we won't fund it, but we'll still mandate it.
Unfunded mandates.
Yes. So trying to keep things moving along, and some of the things that are not in other departments. And I'm not sure if they're really in the finance area either, but there is another department going back to the general fund, and if you flip back to page 70, there is a payment that goes out from the general fund to the water utility, and it's called fire hydrant rental. And it's really a public service fire protection charge, basically reimbursing the utility for their cost of having fire protection and fire hydrants, or the oversizing of mains to be able to fight fires. Usually that is calculated on a formula basis, and I haven't gotten to the bottom of this, but the city of Oshkosh has held that payment at $650,000 for a number of years. And usually that is based in your rate structure from the Public Service Commission, so that might change, but we don't see a change for 2020.
It just seems weird that that's a constant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the other communities I worked for, that was
So
not.
obviously, we're not asking for a rate increase when we go to the PSC for this portion.
Not for this
So-
portion, no, in fact, this
So-
is frozen for years.
Yeah.
So, is there a better way, to get the $650,000 than having this separate
There
entry-
was.
entry? I mean,
There was up until about 5 years ago. There were some communities that took this off the property tax support and actually had it as another charge on the utility bill.
Okay.
But that time has gone by.
Peter and Paul.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not only that, if we add it as a charge, we'd have to reduce our levy by that same amount. So you can't replace it with something else.
Gotcha.
It was one of those pieces of legislations that there's like 4 or 5 charges.
Stormwater was one of them.
Stormwater's one of them, but the city of Oshkosh was before that.
Grandfathered
And grandfathered in, but hydrant rental was one of them, or public fire protection was one of them. And so if it was on your tax-supported services now, you couldn't change it.
You couldn't do it as an expenditure restraint.
Okay.
Deduction.
Yeah. And so it kind of took away the
Yeah.
incentive to do it.
So it just is basically there. And then there's a whole grouping of expenditures on page 110, which is the unclassified section. And there may be some questions on that. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. And I got a tab for unclassified on the side too.
Is it a big tab?
Yes, it is. These are just basically charges coming out of the general fund that we don't allocate to any specific department.
Should we be, Russ, you're new, I mean, should we be allocating?
No, this is pretty common.
Okay.
There are some things, and you heard a little bit from Lynn, there's some legal costs that the attorney's office doesn't have any control over. That was at the bottom. There are expenses for other benefits, bank fees. The biggest area in this is the uncollectibles as far as ambulance fees. So we write those off.
Can we talk about that for a second, Mark? I mean, are we doing a better job of collecting these fees?
Oh, I think we are, but it's a matter of once they're deemed, 88% of our fees, ambulance fees, are either Medicare, Medicaid, or called private pay, which you would think, oh, that's insurance. It is not insurance. We have 12% of our clients, our patients, that are covered by insurance. And the other 88% are not. So those private pays are the ones we usually fall through the cracks. We write off Medicare and Medicaid all the time. But these are ones where we know we're never gonna get the money, and after 3 years, I think we finally write them off. So, that's just one of it's an accounting function that we.
So we have a collection agency, we have,
You go through all that and people don't pay.
okay.
So, we use a collection firm, I can't remember what the name of it.
LifeQuest.
It's still LifeQuest? Oh, okay.
They do
Well,
all.
I know we had an ambulance bill from Waukesha?
Watoma, probably.
Watoma.
That's where
Is that
That's where LifeQuest is.
Okay.
It's owned by somebody else now, but the firm started out in Watoma in the early 90s. I was their first customer in Berlin, so so I remember them.
I don't see the uncollected ambulance on this. Where you mentioned that.
It's
Bad
in the
debt,
908.
uncollectable
It's in
accounts.
bad debt, yeah.
But, right here. on
It's
the
under
top.
tax refunds and bad debt.
Ah, there it
Because
is.
it's technically any bad debt, but it's the bulk of it's.
Ambulance.
It's 6469 under
The
the
water
908.
wouldn't be there, the uncollected water, because
No.
that goes on the
In the
assessment.
utilities. That would be in the utilities.
Yeah, the uncollected water by statute becomes a lien on the property.
6469 would also include any dark store refunds.
Yes, it
Oh,
would.
right.
And then 6102, quite a big uptick from 2019 in terms of salary adjustments. Is that collective bargaining salary adjustments that we're absorbing, or is that that's not necessarily pay for performance, or
Is this also the payouts for retirements? Yes. Yeah, so we're
Okay.
anticipating a big
Okay.
bump up in that.
And then 64, 61, you've got 100 grand in contingency under this particular.
That is Russ putting a placeholder in for your consideration in case of something that came in that's not in there. If you wanted to allocate some of that out to some of the budget enhancements, you can. It's just basically there for any unforeseen natural disaster, emergencies that may come forward or have to get moved to other departments. So at this point, it's a placeholder.
And the other part of that is we're dealing with expenditure restraint. If council chooses to, for lack of a better term, leave money on the table, they don't want to increase the levy, but their spending capacity, we would recommend you put it in contingency so that you have it. Doesn't mean you have to spend it, but at least you have at least you've given
The dry
yourself
powder.
Capacity to use it.
capacity to use it for future years.
You actually may have a request for consideration before the end of 2019 to make sure that we bring the even though we're not going to spend it, to bring the 2019 base to the highest point we can bring it to use as a launching pad for 2020. So I'm going to ask for your consideration at a subsequent meeting to adjust the 2019 contingency amount. Even though it's so late in the year, we just want to adjust the base so that the base going forward into 2020 is higher.
Yeah.
We're not going to spend it. We're not going to levy for it. It's
But it's
just an
there.
accounting tool
that's
that's
a no-brainer.
available to us to stay within the rules and regulations.
One day you'll thank us.
Yep. No, I agree. It's a no-brainer.
So Russ, on our proposed enhancements, that total amount, if all of these, if we said, yes, we're gonna do all of these enhancements, what would that do to our rate?
Okay.
The 944, 978.
I didn't figure that out, but I did figure out that on the sheet I gave you this morning, it was the revised page 2.
It's right after those numerals and numerals.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking for the new one he gave me. That was outside my book.
Kind of work this. I gotta have
Yellow.
to.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
yellow
It's got the-
highlighted.
Yeah, I know.
So if you just
I
slide
think I
that.
ate it. My dog ate it.
Here.
Pop it in.
What is it, 37,000 for each penny?
Yeah, 37,323,
So-
depending on what the final.
It would be.
So this is zero enhancements.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I could work out that exact calculation for you. I just don't.
We've got a spreadsheet from before that I'll show
Yeah.
Russ that we
Yeah.
plugged in whatever the assessed value was, and we always wait till we have the final assessed value. But as we get to next week's meeting, we can show you. But if you take 37,000 as the 1
cent.
penny, now some of these are utilities, which wouldn't be counted in here.
Yeah.
But most of the other ones, everything on page X and half of which on page X1, those are all general fund. So those would be pretty significant.
And I asked Russ earlier, we have about $750,000 in capacity to come up to.
On the expenditure
on the
restraint.
expenditure restraint limits.
Right.
We have about $750,000 that we can, if so choosing, to come up, and then that's when it hits your hard deadline.
But $750,000 would equate to about $2 increase in the tax rate over and above what's on page 2. So you've got to, the reality is going to kick in long before expenditure restraint does.
Yes.
Because council's going to, your appetite for increasing taxes is really going to govern what you do.
The good news is we can make it work within the expenditure restraint and levy limit.
This year, what about next year, though? That's the problem.
That's true.
That's why we'd rather keep our powder dry in the lab.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We got some issues next year,
So you can see, I mean, that's where, each of the departments, as you could tell, each of the departments that had enhancements were, this here's your opportunity to make your pitch to council, because in reality, council can't do all of these.
No,
just can't.
well, we can't do half of them.
Yeah, you can't, you can do very few, and they understand that, and we've explained it to them, I think, pretty well.
If you're
But
still,
speaking of, Russ still
but
has
then-
one to pitch.
When you put in an enhancement of something like, Bodie was
Sorry.
talking about, that's a must, it's a mandate, so it's not really an enhancement because you have to do it, it sounds like.
Well, there are things we have to do. The mandate does not say you have to hire certain people. The mandate says you have to get certain things done. And, as we get into those things, like the operator, I think there's some legitimate issues. There might be some opportunities, with some staffing changes that Russ has made in his department that I think we might be able to do. Plus, I think, even the Aquahawk, that software that we're looking to add to help keep.
Is that like,
Aquahawk.
is that like some secret project you guys are
No.
cooking up?
No,
there?
that's just the-
Project Aquahawk?
We actually,
code word,
product.
code word.
That's,
It's a product.
that's the product that we've ultimately settled on, the one that keeps track
Right.
of utility usage.
Right.
And there's some opportunities.
We're going with Aquahawk. I like Aquahawk.
Sounds cool.
It does.
It's a product that is being utilized by a number of communities to help.
Should we call it Watergate then?
It was close.
Before we get to the library, if we're still on page 2, there's a couple things I'd like to walk through that I probably should have done this morning, just so you understand where we're at in the process. So right now, the general fund, the main operating budget of our city, we have a tax levy need of $19,672,750, and that's up 2.37%. Then we also have tax levy going to all these other special revenue funds. So we have levy going into garbage collection, street lighting, museum, senior services, the library, cemetery, the amphitheater, water park, and rental inspections. So those are all those special funds we talked about this morning. Then we have the capital projects, and to fund capital projects right now, we're looking at a tax levy of $1,011,000 of tax levy in 2020 going for capital projects. We talked about the debt service levy of $12,070,600. And then we have some levy going into enterprise funds, and that's kind of unique to the city of Oshkosh. But right now, the Opera House is looking at a $2,000 tax levy, and then Transit has $809,500 levy. So in total, of that $40 million, $250,000 tax levy represents a 2.7% increase over the levy that was approved for 2019.
And how much of that is salaries?
That's a good question. I can get that
No,
number.
no, I'm not, I don't expect you to have
yeah.
it, but I think
Well-
to put it in perspective for the people at home, where and when you say 2.7 of the levy, people panic thinking their bill's gonna go up 2.7%,
Right.
which it's not.
Right.
But
Here's a good rule of thumb for you. The total increase is $1,062,000. 453 of it is debt service, so that's definitely not staff.
Right.
So you're probably about 600,000, give or take. Yeah, about 600,000. Generally, staffing is about 3/4
Right.
of the entire budget. So you could easily say that 3/4 of that is 600,000 or 450. I just gave you a
Gotcha.
very, very rough.
10,000
Russ
feet,
is
right.
doing the math like
No,
I don't know.
no. But the
that's
the
fair.
fact of the matter is, we're not producing widgets.
I get
We're
it,
providing
I get it,
services.
and that's been a difficult transition for me.
Yeah.
So I get it. So the only guy that can produce widgets is Alan in his department. I don't think he's asking for much. So,
Yeah.
but I want the people at home to understand where are these numbers coming
Right.
from.
And
I think that's the part they don't understand is if we do nothing, it's going to go up 2% a year. If we do absolutely nothing, if we freeze everything, it's going to go up 2% a year. I mean, or
Right, your base
about.
budget is a 2.7% increase.
Right.
Just to carry that one step further, though, for the people at home listening, we do have some slight growth in our assessed valuation, and then this is outside a tax increment district. of just under, or just around a 0.25%. But the tax rate itself, based on that, is projected to increase by 25 cents. Okay, so if you're looking at
25 cents per thousand?
per thousand.
Okay.
So if you're trying to translate how this impacts my personal tax bill, figure 25 cents on 1,000 for city purposes.
Right.
Well, would go up.
So for a $100,000 home,
$25.
We
$25,
put, we put for a
right.
$150,000 house right now, we're projecting $38.88. Did I read
Mhm.
that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
without a single enhancement.
Correct.
Okay, right. Now, some of those people would look at that, some of those people at home are gonna go, oh, it only went up $38. Other people are gonna go,
Oh, my God.
oh my God, it went up $38. So, I mean, that, we have to weigh all of that.
Right.
Under $1 a week.
Yeah,
It's $1 a week, can you
right,
believe it?
right.
It's all relative. If you're on fixed
Absolutely.
income, that's a lot.
It matters.
With that, we have one more department, Madam Mayor and council members.
Drum roll for library.
Jeff, you don't have any CIPs, right?
No CIPs.
Okay, so we're just talking base budget here.
Yep. Starts on page 152 of your book. I just want to thank you all for all of you being here. That's really excellent. The work of this process is grueling, and there's a lot of detail, and just want to express my appreciation for your efforts through the whole budget process. So, very briefly, the library board's proposed budget, this was endorsed by the library board at its August regular meeting, is really a cost to continue budget. When we received our budget assumptions from Mark earlier this summer, we were instructed to allow increases in a certain number of lines, and then the rest was the direction was 0% increase in all other items, and this budget conformed to that. It increased in the areas we were authorized to increase, and it does not increase in the other areas. We're continuing to evolve the public library and its services to the community of Oshkosh. Our traditional services are all in place, story times, lots of books, lots of movies, lots of audiobooks, both in physical formats and now in downloadable e-formats through some of our partnerships with library systems statewide, as well as some products that we subscribe to here locally. The library is really working to become a more vital community center of social infrastructure for community building, where people can come to have experiences, to learn together, to be inspired, to pursue their own interests, their professional and personal growth. We've had a really challenging 2019. In the last week of February, three of my members of my management team retired in 1 week. They took 91 years of library experience out the door and $67,000 in retirement payouts out the door in one week. Add to that, some of you are aware that I'm also the director of the Winnefox Library System, which is a 5-county, 30-library support service for public libraries. The assistant director for the Winnefox Library System also retired in the middle of September. So we've spent a lot of 2019 at the library not attacking the action items in our strategic plan, but reorganizing, reconceptualizing what our management structure should be like, hiring some people, redefining some positions. A few years ago, I brought to the council, as part of the budget process, a proposal to create a community engagement librarian. Some of you may remember that. The idea was to have a librarian dedicated to being more out in the community, talking about the library, connecting with the community, we didn't create a new position, but we are redefining some of our internal resources so that we hope that at the beginning of 2020, we're going to be able to actually have that position in existence. And that has been made possible by the play that happens when senior managers move on, and then we can recommit that capacity in different directions. So we're doing so much that's really fun and interesting. We kicked off an interactive learning environment in the children's department called Explorers Grove. We have a Lego wall and open build times for families to come in and build Legos together. We've done a number of STEM-related programs like Girls Who Code, Wonder Lab. We're really trying to bring families in together, kids in, and folks who are interested in learning and engaging with one another to exercise their literacy at the public library. So that's the big picture. You have the budget proposal in front of you. I'm ready to answer any questions you might have about that.
Jeff, I'm new to all this, but I was absolutely shocked when I saw the expense of operating our library here in town, and the man hours and things like that. What are the hours at the library? What are the standard hours?
Well, the hours are different during the school year and during the summer. During the school year, we're open 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 8 to 6 on Friday, 9 to 5, I believe, on Saturday, 1 to 5 on Sunday.
Okay.
During the summer, we close earlier on Saturday. We close at 1 p.m. on Saturday, and we're closed on Sunday during the summer. I think it's about 64 hours a week during the school year.
Okay, all right. And do we have any metrics, like how many people walk through the door for the last 5 years and things like that? I mean, are numbers going up or down, or where are we at?
So the world, Bill, right?
Yep, it is. It's Bill, sorry.
Bill, no, that's great. The world is changing. The way the world uses the kinds of services and programs that the library traditionally has offered has been, in some cases, swept away or significantly changed by the digital revolution. So we have, and I won't try to hide this, on circulation of physical items from the library, in the last 10 years, it's decreased by 1/3. And our walk-in traffic in the building is quite similar. It's decreased by about 1/3 in the last 10 years. However, think about this. The library and its users, the people who come and use our services, do it because they elect to do it. There's nobody in the city that makes them use the public library. In past years, if some of you think back to school days, there was a captive audience for the public library when your high school teacher said, you will go down to the public library and write this research paper using 3 books, 2 magazines, and a newspaper article. So that kind of captive traffic that would come to the library doesn't exist anymore. Kids in the school districts have Chromebooks. They're connecting to the internet to do their research. So the demand for our traditional resources is decreasing. However, we are moving into remote use of the library through the Wisconsin Digital Library, which circulates ebooks and downloadable audiobooks. We also subscribe to a product called Hoopla, which also circulates those sorts of materials. The difference between those two services is one of them you have to get on a waiting list, and with Hoopla, if it's there, you can download it now. So it's like an on-demand streaming book and audiobook service. So yes, the traditional measures of use are changing. When I started here 14 years ago, we had about 1.1 million people through the door in a particular year. I used to brag we had the best foot traffic of anybody downtown. We may still have some of the best foot traffic. I've got some other metrics besides the ones that appear in the budget book here. And I know I have foot traffic here. Give me a second.
Is that all data I have that
No.
I can look at? Okay, all
No,
right.
we were limited to 2 to 3 performance indicators.
Okay.
And 2 to 3 performance indicators does not well characterize the broad range of services that the public library offers. I thought I had library visits per capita. Total library visits. So our total foot traffic,
Yep, the library per capita is in.
yeah, it's like 2.61 for 2018. My number might be a little bit different from yours because I went through to update some of these.
I guess, and that's fine, I guess where I'm
Yeah.
going is, your business is down a third, right? I mean, that's what you're telling me?
That part of our business is
Right.
down a third.
But,
We're developing new lines of business.
sure, I understand that, but then, two things bother me about this. Number one, I don't have control over your budget, you know, so we're gonna hand you this money and everything, and I knew foot traffic across all libraries is down, and our numbers keep going up. I just, not knowing the details, from 10,000 feet, I have a real problem with this. So are we not migrating to the digital world quick enough where we can cut staff? Because to me, if my customers are down a third, staff should come down some proportionate number there, or hours or something like that. Or can we be looking at maybe cutting back our hours based on how many people walk through the door and things like that?
Well, we're doing different things. So it's not just saying we're doing less of what we always did so we can cut back the people who used to do that. We're doing new things. We are holding and offering many more programs for the public. And these take a lot of preparation time, thought process. They also take a fair amount of marketing support. So in the last couple of years, we hired positions that we never would have had in the past. We have a marketing coordinator now. We have a graphic designer now on staff. So as we move into doing these other things, we're not finding that we have too much staff capacity. Let's just say that.
And if I can say something to that is, when I visit the library, something that we probably don't talk about a lot is the library actually, we're providing a service to the community, especially those that are displaced.
Well, I don't
No,
disagree.
so I'm just saying, so sometimes I think you might not be able to quantify it based on certain things, but, I've seen a number of our residents who, don't have access to internet and those types of things to search for jobs. And also our seniors, and then also with like the Literacy Council, we provide literacy classes and a number of things like that. So there's some things that I think they're kind of hard to see necessarily tangible within the budget, but yet provide a service.
I think kind of what you're getting at, Deb, here is we are a safety net for participation in the digital environment. We do get a fairly large number of people who will come to use technology at the library and to gain assistance in using that. They come with all levels of ability or lack of ability, and helping those folks can sometimes take an hour to help one person. So as we're doing different things, it's not a simple subtraction to say you're doing less, you're circulating fewer books, you're shelving fewer books, you should be able to cut staff. We are trying to build a different menu of services to serve the community's needs for literacy, for learning, for reading and growing. So, I mean, I understand the question, and I don't mean to be evasive with it.
I don't think you're being
but
evasive, no.
If you think of us as in comparison to print journalism, another institution that rose and thrived in a time of information scarcity with ink on paper, we're doing a little better than they are. Luckily, we're not advertising based for our revenue, but we serve the community in that regard by making these resources available in the traditional formats, because I'm told at least 3 times a week how much somebody loves a print book and they don't want to let go of it. So we are serving people who have expectations over the full spectrum of where information can occur, from print newspapers to online to dial-in databases.
and I'm a numbers guy, but the concerns I have is, you know, foot traffic, customers, is down 30%, and from 2017, we're looking at personnel expenses at 2.4, and now we're up to 2.8, so you know, you're talking a 20% increase with a 30% less customer base. That's just alarming to me, and I'm looking to be
Here's some
educated.
numbers that I'd like you to know about
Sure.
that aren't there. The city has done a citizen survey almost every year since Mark arrived as city manager. Almost every year, the library ranks for quality of service and importance of the service to the community just below public safety, streets, and water. In the 2018 survey, 94% of the respondents said that the library was very or somewhat important to them. And 91% of them said that the service quality was excellent or good. So from that perspective of, you know, are we valued by the community? That's something that we take pride in, and we're working restlessly to understand how people live today, how they learn today, and how we can deliver self-paced, independent learning resources to people where they are. So that means things like posting to Facebook. It you know, and it means sending out e-newsletters. These are all new activities that the library didn't engage in the past, and so they take different skills than we may have had in the past and different people.
Another thing about quality of life, I mean, people move to communities based on what the city offers. And this is one of those things that you look at the bottom line, and it's a big negative, but with the employees, if you cut the employees by 10%, it wouldn't even make a dent in that. So, and then the quality of service at the library would go down. So, I mean, you walk through the library, it's like a whole nother world.
I invite you to come by, Bill, because when you come in, you won't look around and say, this is a dead place that nobody's using.
No, and again, you know, in my youth, I used the library a lot. So, I mean, I understand its importance, but I have some real concerns over 20% staffing increase in 3 years, and our usership is down, I guess, is all I'm saying, so.
Jeff, question for you.
Sure.
Can you explain, because when you talk about the Winnifox library system, I look at that as being a collaborative library system, is that correct?
Parts of it are collaborative, parts of it are state funded.
Okay.
The shared library automation system that gives you the catalog and the checkout functions, everything that tracks when stuff is due, that's a shared collaborative effort on behalf of the 29 of the 30 libraries that are members of the Winnifox library system. I think we're going to get about $900,000 in state system aids in the 2020 state budget. And that funds other activities like continuing education support for library directors in those 5 counties. It supports the delivery service that moves all the materials around. So if you place a hold on a book in Berlin and it's here the next day or the day after, it's a state-funded service to run those delivery vans. There are a number of other services that the state supports. Though we spent 4 biennia with flat funding on the state funding, and there were a number of services that we had to cut over the years. We used to offer graphic design service to all 30 of those libraries, and that was a service that had to go by the boards.
And again, I want to reiterate, I don't question the need for the library in the community or the value of it. I'm just questioning these numbers are giving me heartburn, so. That's all.
Well, I guess I just want to, as a person who lives in the neighborhood of the library and has watched the library change in the last 10 years, 15 years, I think it's amazing the type of resource that the library has become in our community. And I'm probably different than Bill in is that those numbers don't bother me as much because I completely understand the resource that this library plays, not just in our central city, but throughout the whole community. It's not just a resource for those that have minimal access to things. There's people that come from all over Oshkosh and all over Winnebago County and several other places just to use our resource. So I look at a library as being a community economic driver. So
Because they may stop and have lunch if they're coming from out of the city.
that's
or
what we don't know.
shop.
You say that you may have the best walk-in numbers in the downtown Oshkosh. What we maybe haven't measured is exactly that, is what type of impact does the library have on those neighboring businesses. And for instance, pretty much every time I go to the library, I'm with my kids, and it's a trip over to the New Moon, no matter what, New Moon or the Caramel Crisp. So that's just one thing. What I think is really interesting is that typically when we think about teens, we think about the Boys and Girls Club outside of like schools and stuff like that. What hasn't been talked about is the library's role in enriching an experience for teens to come back to the library. And that's something that has really taken place in the last 3 years from what I can observe, of where they're having movie nights where they're involving teens and how to set up the library, be part of that. Nowhere can a teen go where they feel like they have so much input. And I think that's why libraries are different than so many of the other things that we provide, is that they're really meant to provide a resource that citizens who utilize that resource have kind of a say in. So I think you're using your resources in a very beneficial way to our community. And no offense to you,
Bob,
Bill,
I'm none
you know,
taken, absolutely.
But I see that this is one of our best investments in our community, is how the library utilize its resources. The fact that I don't have to walk into the library because I'm extremely busy, but still check out a book and be able to list it on my device is very cool to me. The fact that my kids still love books and that they come to the library once a week is not just something with my family, it's with several families. And I think you're being innovative with how times are changing, and I think that shows here with that. So
I don't have the graph with me today, Bill, and I haven't updated it in a while, but the long-term trend of the library's share of the city spending pie is that it's actually shrinking, not growing. So this.
Thank
And I will
you.
tell you too, that I actually selected the location of my apartment when I moved to Oshkosh because of its proximity and the ability to view the library and use the library as someone moving from outside the city. It was, park, library. Now you can have both because you have the little William Waters.
We have William Waters Plaza right in front of the library now. You've got a park and a library.
I just want to add, we go to the library and check out books, and my kids love the books so much. They hide them, and we get late fees all the time. So, check our name.
Okay.
I was just gonna.
I help fund the library with my late fees.
So,
Jeff, if you could share with the council, you've got some other funding sources and where some of the trends are, because you're making trips to Madison every once in a while. Because, technically your expenditures are going down, but your levy's going up. So if you could talk a little bit about some of the other funding sources, that might help answer some of the questions that Bill has, because you've got a drop in library contractual revenue, for example. And if you could just talk about how dependent you are for some of those other revenues, and how sometimes those dictate what the levy support ends up being.
Yeah, and on page 155, near the top, there is a line library contractual revenue. And those are revenues paid by Winnifox and the Winnifox Automated Library Services Collaborative that we were talking about before, Bob, for Oshkosh Public Library staff that provide the cataloging and the database support for that shared database. We reorganized that department late last year, and in fact, we organized out a .82 professional librarian position. We did not rehire that position, so we captured efficiencies in that department. Now, that doesn't immediately redound to the levy's benefit because those positions were funded through contractual revenues. So we did pass on the savings in the reduction in the staff to the people who were contracting for those, which was the Winnifox Library System. But that did mean a drop in about $50,000 in our in our contractual revenue, at least from that line. There are some other
And
variations.
even more to my point, I mean, I want to be clear, I'm obviously the Grinch who stole Christmas here today, but I have no intention of closing the library down, but I look at the staffing requirements and I'm just wondering, could these be, and again, not letting anybody go, but as somebody retires, could they be replaced with part-time, things like that? That's all I'm asking. And again, I don't know. I
Sure.
don't know, so I'm not judging.
Let me
I'm
tell you a little
asking.
bit
All right.
about an experiment I ran this past year. One of the 3 people that retired beginning of March was my head of reference, the person who ran the reference department on the 2nd floor. And my initial thought was, couldn't I have my head of public services run both floors? So I made her do that for about 6 months, and it proved to be not a good strategy. The folks on 2 different floors needed the kind of management guidance of somebody who was right there with them, role modeling, training, teaching, coaching. And so I kind of rethought that, and we're in the process now of hiring for that position. But we did try an experiment to see, could we do without that management position? In the end, the answer was no. So we needed to have someone to guide those folks and help them provide good service to the public.
Do we know how many communities around the country, similar sized cities, have closed their public library? Or their
In the
staffing
United,
levels are about the same,
in the
or-
United States, it's pretty rare to hear about a public library closing. There was a threat a few years back of Salinas, California, possibly closing its library. I've heard recently of a very small community in south central, maybe Dodge County here in Wisconsin, but it's a tiny little community, and the library was not able to keep professional management. So, I mean, more of a reading room than a true public library. But it's fairly rare that I've not heard of a community the size of Oshkosh closing its public library. In the UK, the library profession is essentially dying. Many of the county councils in England have either shuttered public libraries or have moved to running them with pure volunteer sources. So the public librarian profession in England is actually withering away because of that commitment is going away. So I'm glad to say that's not the case here in the United States.
And I just think with the digital era upon us, where kids can download books and things like that and everything. And again, I want to be crystal clear. I don't intend on closing the library, but
You got to come by and let me give you a tour.
and it's been years, so I'll take you up on that. But I would ask that you take a hard look at your budget and future budgets, please.
I'm trying to assure you that we do that.
Okay.
We do that every time there's a vacancy, every time there's an opening. As I said, I tried to do without a management position. It just wasn't going to fly.
Okay.
So we do look at every vacancy, every change. We try to either reposition the capacity or decide, can we do without it. We haven't, I'll be honest, we haven't done a lot of elimination of positions except for that cataloging position that I mentioned last year. We did eliminate 0.82 of a FTE of a professional librarian position last year.
Sure. And if you need any assistance looking at it, Fitzy's been reorganizing a lot, so he's pretty
always,
efficient.
He's
so.
always offering help.
All right.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
So actually, in full disclosure, before I even make a couple comments, one, as a reminder to those at the table and those at home too, my better half serves on as a trustee on your board. So just full disclosure. Two. To a couple of your points, I personally help fund some of your revenues because I have a inability to return family materials in a timely fashion. So you're welcome. And two, one of my main things, because we talk about the next generation and digital and the driver that everything's going that way, it seems like. But what is our relationship with the youth in the community? Specifically, what is our relationship with the Oshkosh Area School District, and getting that. I think one of your missions is a card in every hand, or a card in every.
It is.
Yes, and so what is that relationship? How tight is it? How effective are we with our school children, getting that library card in their hands to get them to come there? And then a little follow-up maybe.
Short answer is the school district has its own plans, its own requirements, its own standards that it has to adhere to. It's always a real challenge for us to connect in a productive way with a classroom teacher, and that's really the only way to reach kids in the schools. We've made a number of efforts. We're not going to quit, but it can be frustrating at times to get their attention and to get a real productive partnership going. Some of the things that we do, however, our children's department brings classes in for tours of the children's library on a regular basis. Our teen services librarian, I'm glad Bob was mentioning teens, goes to the high schools to promote the summer library programs and the teen programs and the teen group that she runs. So, we try to get into the schools as much as we can. We try to connect with the media aides, but school media as a profession is also under duress. So it's a constant challenge to keep working productively with this school district, but we won't quit.
Well, I appreciate that you won't quit. It's just that that's that generation that needs to make sure they're finding their way through that door to continue, to Bill's point, to increase that foot traffic. Generation.
There's been interesting
right.
surveying recently that shows that teens especially value print books because it's a change of pace from looking at a screen. So I think we have an in there. I think that there's still a regard for the book as a learning tool, and we're going to continue to try to get attention for it as much as we can.
There's another youth connection too, Jeff. Maybe you want to mention the transit partnership with the library during the summer for youth and teens.
Oh, sure. We purchase a number of rides from the transit system. And during the summer, any child that shows their library card to the bus driver can get a free ride to the public library. So, we're trying to encourage them to be independent, be out in the community, and come and use the library.
Can you let us know roughly what you're spending on purchasing those or paying to go transit for their transportation of students to your library?
I knew that was coming, Matt. Thanks.
Well, somebody's going to tee one up.
No, I mean, I think it's. I'm going to give you a number, and it's certainly going to be wrong, but it's maybe $2,000 to $3,000, somewhere in that range. It's not much more than that, and well worth the investment to give kids that summer independence and a good community place to come to.
Place. Yeah.
Other questions? I appreciate, Bill, I appreciate your questions. I really do. I hope you'll come by and let me show you around and you can see what that money's getting spent on.
Absolutely.
There might be a rumble in the parking lot afterwards, but.
And we know where he's headed after the.
Any other question?
No. Better be
If you go
parked
with
there.
Bob,
Thank you.
He'll take you to Carmel Crisp after.
Appreciate your attention. Again, I appreciate all of your effort
Thank you.
in the whole budget process. I know it's a marathon.
Over the years, Jeff, you've had some stuff in the CIP. Is there any work being done on the library this year? I didn't see anything.
We had some small projects that we covered within our budget surplus. We don't have any CIP projects for the 2020.
Okay.
There are a couple that are on the
2021, right?
Yeah, there's some elevator upgrades that'll be on the horizon, and this past fall, or this past spring, we had half of our 19 rooftop HVAC units replaced.
Okay.
The other half of that will need to be done, and it comes out of the HVAC and roofing kind of set aside in the CIP.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly where John Urban has us scheduled for that project, but that one's covered. So no new projects really for 2020.
Sounds good.
Thank you all.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Thank you.
your support, and good luck with the rest of the process.
Thank you.
That's all we have today, Madam Mayor.
Recess until tomorrow.
You're more than welcome to leave your booklets here and whatnot. You don't need to haul them home unless you are studying tonight, but that's okay if you leave them here.
All right, tomorrow morning.